all and wish all of those to Harris all the start of the Board of County Commissioners regular meeting. Today is Tuesday, September 23rd, 2025. Welcome again those online joining us and those inside the hall itself. I'd like to make a small statement here real quick. Due to the multiple and tragic events of the last 2 weeks, our country has experienced some very difficult and dark days. Several innocent people, children, and public safety officers have lost their lives, and I grieve them all. I still want to be a champion to the courageous causes that allow people to live the way they wish, to speak freely, and to come to the table with fruitful dialogue, and to fight and champion for families and for truth. I also grieve any actions that I've done that may have contributed to some of this, so I'm asking for healing and grace and peace over our county and our land. And I'd like to offer a few moments of silence for what went on this week. Thank you very much. Well, good morning to our colleagues and my esteemed County Administrator, Mr. Mokryski. How are you, sir?
Good morning.
Good. Looking great as always. We thank you. Is there any adjustments to our agenda this morning, sir?
We don't have any from staff, no.
Any emergency business?
No.
All right. We do have a public hearing item. The public hearing item is concerning a resolution 25092301. It's a matter of adopting the fiscal year 2025-26 supplemental budget number 1, making and reducing and transferring appropriations. And we have a summary from our budget and financial planning manager, Ms. Christine Moody, and looks like Jen's joining us too. Good morning.
Good morning. Yes, bringing Jennifer Violet. She's one of the budget analysts in the budget office for a couple more days because she's moving on to new adventures. But she did the work to put this together with departments. So bringing her up here in case you have any questions. So as noted, this is our first supplemental. Things that have changed since the budget was adopted, which things are changing quickly in some places. So we do have a couple that I will highlight for you. District Attorney's Office is losing 2.5 FTE related to reduction of a victim's advocate grant. In Health and Human Services, we're seeing the reduction of just over 8 FTE in public health related to planned funding and planned funding end dates, and reducing almost 15 FTE in the community health centers related to those service changes, increasing 3.5 FTE in developmental disabilities because of increased funding there. So there are some places where we see very modest increases and then reductions in other areas. We have some projects transfers occurring, so that is the reason for the public hearing is our capital projects fund is increasing more than 10% in its expenditures because of project money, timing of projects through the over the 2 fiscal years, and so moving money forward to spend it in this fiscal year. And then there's places where we're receiving a little bit of additional revenue, some grant revenue being different than projected. One place we're receiving some FEMA money from the ice storm that happened in parks. They're being reimbursed for that. So that's the bulk of the changes for you.
Great. Let me explain some of the purpose of the hearing for the public. This is a public hearing on the supplemental budget for the current fiscal year budget as allowed under ORS 294.471 and ORS 294.473. This is a public hearing, is required under ORS 294.473 due to one or more funds amending expenditures by more than 10% from the current budgeted amounts. Notice of this hearing and a summary of the changes was published as detailed in the supplemental budget order and resolution included with this agenda item. Participants may testify for or against any item contained in the supplemental budget. So I'd like to now formally open the public hearing to this. If there's anyone here that signed up for public hearing on this item, this is the time to come forward. Do we have any? Looks like we do not. So I will close the public hearing on this item. And is there any additional comments from Jen or Christine? No? Any questions from colleagues? All right, good deal.
Mayor?
Yes, go ahead. Commissioner Farr.
Just a quick question with a refresher on the 2.5 reduction in the DA's office. Which funding sources caused that reduction?
Well, that's a victim advocate grant funding, so it is federal.
It's a federal funding cut because of DA.
Any other? All right, Vice Chair, I'm looking for a motion on this item.
Chair, I have a motion. I move to, or Move to approve the resolution 2509-2301 in the matter of adopting the fiscal year 25-26 supplemental budget number 1, making, reducing, and transferring appropriations.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
It's been moved by Vice Chair and seconded by Commissioner Buck to move approval of order resolution adopting the fiscal 25-26 supplemental budget 1, making, reducing, and transferring appropriations. Any discussion to the motion?
I would like to vote no, but I'm not going to.
Fair enough, as we'd all. I'll call for the vote then. All those in favor signify with an aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much. Motion passed 5-0. Thank you very much, staff. Appreciate you. And now we have something that's a little more fun on our schedule. We have some employee recognition, and it looks like we have a few smiling folks coming to the table. Mr. Mokryski, you want to take it from here?
Thank you, Chair, Commissioners. Good morning. And this is, we love to start our board meetings off with some positive news and recognizing our great employees for their outstanding service. You may recall a few weeks ago, we recognized an employee for a community health worker for stopping and helping out someone who was experiencing an overdose, a fentanyl overdose. And here today, we have George Rosales, who is a mental health associate with our mobile crisis team. We also have some folks in the back who are here with our mobile crisis team. You can raise your hands in support. George, along with Graham Smith, who's also a mental health associate, was not able to be here today. This story is a story of two of our incredible employees who went above and beyond the call of duty, truly, outside of their scope of responsibility to help someone who was in need. On June 13th, while en route to a mobile crisis call, George Rosales and Graham Smith witnessed someone riding very fast on their bicycle down a hill and through an intersection. Graham saw the biker fall behind a parked car, and when the biker did not get up, George and Graham decided to pull the van over and check on them. It became clear right away that the person was severely injured. George, who is a former firefighter, assessed the rider and began performing life-saving CPR. George and Graham remained calm and focused, managing the scene and caring for the community member while they awaited EMS arrival. An incredible story. Any of us would hope that if we were in a similar situation, there was a George and Graham waiting to care for us until EMS arrived. And just another example of our employees who this was not in the scope of their duty. They're mobile crisis mental health specialists who are responding to people in need in the community. Really incredible work, but this was something that was outside of that, and yet they stopped and cared for this individual. And it just, to me, is a reflection of the type of people we have working in public service here in Lane County. We talk about our 3 core behaviors that we value so much: a passion to serve, a drive to connect, and a focus on solutions. And they certainly demonstrated those, particularly the passion to serve in this. So we want to thank George and Graham, who's not able to be here. We have some certificates, and I want to ask Director Eve Gray if she has some additional comments.
Yeah, thank you. Really a remarkable story. And this was an individual who, of course, we are not permitted to find out what happens to someone after they're transported to the hospital, but was alive at the point of transport thanks to the life-saving measures that George and Graham took. And, you know, that again, it is absolutely another example of how much our staff care about our community and every person in it, whether it's in their scope of duty or not. When there's an opportunity to help, they step up and do. And I would be remiss as the Director of Health and Human Services and a nurse if I didn't say time is muscle. And for someone who requires CPR, having someone there who can provide high-quality compressions immediately at the point when the heart stops is really the best hope of survival. That any kind of delay in waiting for EMS or assuming that someone else will help once they're called often leads to the end of someone's life because time is muscle and the muscle dies. So, and the brain dies, of course. So this is so wonderful an opportunity to, just like last time we said, gosh, everybody should carry Narcan. Now it's everybody should take at least hands-only CPR so that we can all help each other in these times of need in our community. And thanks so much, George, for stepping up to the plate when your community needed you.
So, George, we talked a lot about you, and we don't want to put you on the spot, but if you'd like to correct the record in any way or share any thoughts, we'd welcome that.
I mean, no, Eve's correct. Absolutely right. Being in the fire service for 5 years prior to moving over to mental health, like time is key, right? We all talk about the golden hour, just like the golden thread of mental health. Like there is a connection that we need to establish early patient care, early care in general, like to save lives. I would be saddened if we did not provide that care. Because my time in the service, we did run across a lot of people who needed CPR, who, of course, were unfortunately in those positions that somebody waited, somebody didn't call on time, somebody assumed. So this was something that I wanted to really give back to somebody who really needed it at that time. Early interventions, the best, will provide the best outcome. So glad we did it.
Chair, Commissioners, good luck topping that.
Wonderful story. We don't hear those often like that. Heroic stories like that. To the board. Yes, Commissioner Farr.
Thank you. You know, George, you give us a chance to recognize your work and Graham's work, but you're also giving us a lesson. You and Eve together are giving us a lesson. It's everybody's responsibility. You stepped up to the plate when it was you felt it to be your responsibility. You saved the muscle, you saved the brain, you saved the life, we can presume. And that really is a lesson for everybody sitting in this room, that if, Eve, we all took hands-on only CPR, that alone would be a measure of response. And if we all took the responsibility to step aside, to cut out what we're doing, to step in and be the one that saves the muscle, be the one that saves a life, I only hope that if that occurs, that I have both the skill, the wherewithal, and the attention that you gave to it. One last thing, I'm going to put you on the spot one more time. As you came in, you high-fived with 3 folks in the back of the room. Who are they?
Also members of our mobile crisis team. We have
They can self-introduce if you'd like.
Yeah, we have Sagamore, one of our newest members. Go ahead. We have Jimmy, and we have Leslie. All right.
Thanks for being here this morning, and thank you very much for the lesson, and one that I hope we will take.
Vice Chair.
Sure, yes. Thank you, George. That was, Mr. Mokrajski put, top that. You know, I love that you guys are out there helping people, and it's so evident that you guys truly care and that your team is dedicated to the work you're doing. This is a big event, and this is, you know, I mean, you helped save a life, and think how many more of those this team is going to help save. So thank you guys for the work you're doing, and it's truly appreciated. You're filling the void that needs to be filled. Thank you.
Commissioner Trigger.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I always think when we hear stories like this of how many people weren't fortunate enough to happen to have their incident coincide with when someone who was willing to pull over and knew what to do was there. We know these things are happening all the time, so what an incredible, fortunate circumstance that you were there right at that time. And thank you for the reminder about CPR. I had my own experience not long ago driving out and noticing someone down on the side of the, sort of in the bushes, and pulled over, called 911 as I was trying to rouse them. And fortunately, it took a while, but they did end up rousing themselves. But the person on the other end of the line was telling me how long before the EMTs, you know, how far out they were, and that they were going to have to start instructing me to do the CPR step by step. And I could just feel my heart was already beating really fast, but I could really feel it go up, like, I don't know how to do this. And she was saying, I'll walk you through it. And when that incident resolved and the EMTs came and the person was clearly going to be okay, I was fortunate to have that resolution, that evidence. I was like, note to self, go do a CPR training. And then, of course, I didn't, right? That was almost, right? You just move on to the next thing. So needed that reinforcement. Have we ever done CPR trainings here? Have we ever offered for staff that we could do? It would be, yeah, maybe it's time to look at another one of those. And I hope that you get, I know this is your job and you see all kinds of things, but this is an extraordinary event, so I hope you're getting the support that you need to work through what it felt like to be in that moment. And thank you for being here. Thanks.
Commissioner Buck?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, and to Graham, for being willing to work here at Lane County. We're fortunate to have you and your team. I think this is just a sign of how important it is to have a mobile crisis care team out and about in general. We already know how important it is to get people who need it right away and to be able to transport them somewhere if possible when we get our stabilization center complete. But I think if we didn't have a mobile crisis care, you wouldn't have been there. It's very possible you wouldn't have been in the vicinity, and this person may have died if there was nobody else that had that same wherewithal that you and Graham had. You know, we have looming budget cuts coming, right? And knowing what critical services the county provides, like mobile crisis care, and the exceptional employees we have doing this work, just reminds us that we have to take great care in trying to find ways to get resources to ensure that this particular program continues for the long haul. Because we know every day you are seeing people who are in crisis, but just having the van out and around in the county is also a very critical need. So thank you again, and to Graham and the team for doing your work and being employees here at Lane County. We appreciate you very much.
You know, that term mobile crisis is what it is, right? You mentioned that he did something that was outside the scope of his work, but that's the scope of his work, is being mobile around a crisis and being outside. So I think that is a very indicative point of who you are as a person and what we do as a county with our mobile crisis team. But also, George, you know, you strike me as someone who's willing to do whatever it takes to do the right thing. And I think to serve without regard to self is one of the highest character traits that someone can bring to the table in life. And so I just want to just affirm you for that and to say thank you for the heart that you share about serving people, regardless if it's outside of your bounds or outside the convenience of what you do. You just do that because that's who you are. And I appreciate that's the kind of people that we attract to this organization and the kind of other folks that we have for this mobile crisis unit. So I just want to tell you, keep up the good work. And leaders will lead by example, and I think your example is exemplary. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Very good. One more time. Come on. Love that. All right, item number 5 on our agenda, moving through our morning, is public comments. The public can speak here in person at Harris Hall or online. The time is limited to 3 minutes. We will ask you to please watch the clock on the screen and stop at the 3-minute mark so we can be fair to everyone. You can also submit public comments via our website at least 24 hours ahead of the meeting to be included in the weekly meeting packet. We respect your First Amendment rights as a tool to address your government with grievances and opinions, but we also want to admonish you to do so in a civil manner, to be respectful in expressing yourself. And as board chair, let me personally say I request the public commenters to please eliminate direct and personal attacks to particular board members, especially in light of this last few weeks. In these public testimony times, as they seem to be unproductive in addressing the real and important issues our constituents are raising for our attention. So when you come to this podium, please state your name for the record, and your time will begin. We'll start with Greg Irvin, followed by, looks like, Pranav Patel.
Good morning, Commissioners. It's good to be here for my first time, making an appeal to you guys, and I just want to start by saying I appreciate the call to service, to step into this role, to seek to make policy that benefits all of the residents that live within the jurisdictions that you represent. It is to that end that I am here. I am a city councilor for the city of Cottage Grove, Ward 4. I'm a resident of Cottage Grove, and I've been contemplating for a number of years now how to create the conditions for our residents in which they have the best opportunity to thrive. Some of those things are just the core necessities of life, of living in a civilized world, where we have clean water and we have sanitary conditions and expelling that waste product, whether it be storm or otherwise. I have the unique and fortunate position of having to adjust rates to keep up with the cost that it takes to operate our wastewater systems and our water systems. And it's an unpleasant process, but necessary because of rising costs, labor and otherwise. And I think long about what does it take to reduce those, to mitigate those costs, those things that we don't have much choice. We have to pay to live. Economies of scale is really what it comes down to in my research. There's not a whole lot of variation in design that yields reduced rates or a strong competitive advantage from one system design to another. And that goes beyond what I have any control over in Cottage Grove. We're one of 7. And so I think at the county level, what can the county do to assist the municipalities within the county to alleviate as much burden as possible for those costs? Economies of scale. Linking municipal wastewater treatment systems, water reclamation sites, to spread that load, to utilize the capacity and to leverage that across the city. I understand that Blue River is looking at needing or requesting connection. I know there's a moratorium on building in Cresswell. It sounds like Coburg didn't have the opportunity to connect in time. There were impediments to that.
Greg, I'm sorry, your time is up.
Oh.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Renaud Patel, followed by Chloe Longworth, please.
Hi there. Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Pranav Patel. Tina Patel with Traveling County wishes she could be here, but I'll be speaking in her stead. We're part of the ownership group with Alka Hotels. We own and operate 5 hotels in Eugene, Springfield. First off, thank you for your continued partnership and support. Traveling County has had the privilege of serving as the destination marketing organization for Eugene, Springfield since 1980, and for the Eugene, Cascades, and Coast region, and for Lane County for nearly 40 years. We take this responsibility seriously, not just in promoting visitation, but ensuring tourism contributes meaningfully to our communities. In 2024, visitors spent more than $1.1 billion in Lane County. That spending supported local businesses, sustained 1 in 9 jobs, and generated nearly $53 million in state and local tax revenue. As a hotel operator, I see firsthand how critical this work is, not only for the lodging industry, but for restaurants, retailers, and local attractions all across our county. What I'm most proud of is how Traveling County has elevated its focus on access and inclusion, whether that's through supporting adaptive trail experiences, conducting accessibility assessments, or expanding outreach to ensure all visitors feel welcome here. This work makes Lane County a stronger destination and a more connected community. We've also seen the importance of investing in all corners of the county, from supporting accessibility projects in Florence to trail projects in Oak Ridge and on the Mackenzie. Our work with the county to expand cycling infrastructure is very exciting, and we look forward to championing efforts that bring both visitors and long-term benefits to our rural communities. Looking ahead, this board is excited about the Destination Master Plan effort now underway. This gives us an opportunity to set a shared vision for the next decade of tourism development, one that is sustainable, equitable, and grounded in our community input. As part of that work, the board continues to support the development of a multi-use indoor sports facility. We believe this would be a game changer for Lane County, attracting regional events, filling hotel rooms countywide, especially in the slower seasons, and serving local athletes and families that need it. There's a real opportunity here for Travel Lane County and Lane County government to partner in creating a winter demand driver that benefits visitors and residents alike. Thank you again for your support, and thank you for your shared commitment to building a thriving and welcoming Lane County for everyone. Cheers.
Thank you very much. Chloe Longworth, followed by Chris Cirillo.
Hello, Commissioners. Today, I would like to speak about Chair Lovell and point out how his behavior during his time as Chair Commissioner, he has been wildly unpredictable in his position. I wanted to bring up a couple of incidents that have recently surfaced. There has been some complaints that Lovell has said, such as an incident where he called someone a stripper on a strip pole. He then said in another incident that commissioners can do whatever they want, and has praised some people for kingdom work, whatever that means. Due to incidents like these, and countless more that I can bring example to, County Administrator Steve Mokohiski has had several talks to Lovell about this behavior. However, instead of learning from these mistakes, Lovell continues to thrash and be unpredictable and hurt everybody, including himself and his people. To quote Mokohiski in some of these conversations they've had, I want to stress this point. Your behavior has become so problematic largely because of how you responded to these concerns when you are confronted with them. You have been defiant and repeatedly escalated the issues, deflecting responsibility, demeaning others, and accusing those who have raised the concerns of being at fault. End quote. Just a personal thought, I don't think that makes you super trustworthy, and if I was going to endorse someone, it wouldn't be you, because you do so many things that are so unpredictable. Thank you.
Great, thank you for your public comment. Chris Cirillo, followed by Elliot Harwell, please.
Good morning, Commissioners. I would like to exercise my First Amendment right to simply pray for our county. Father God, we exalt your name as worthy of all praise, honor, and glory, and acknowledge that everything we have is a gift from you, our loving Father. As your word says in Romans 13, I pray the leaders of this county would understand the account they will have to give for how they've led, and that they are intended to be your servants for good according to your ways and principles. That the fear of the Lord, which is the beginning of all wisdom, would come upon them, recognizing that they will one day stand before a holy and just God and give an account. Let them come to realize the truth of your word in Galatians 6, which says, do not be deceived, God is not mocked. For whatever a person sows, they will also reap. Father, I pray that you, the God of our Lord Jesus Christ, the glorious Father, would give everyone here the spirit of wisdom and revelation in the knowledge of you. I pray that the eyes of their hearts would be enlightened, so that they may know what is the hope of your calling, what is the wealth of your glorious inheritance in the saints, and what is the measurable greatness of your power towards us who believe. According to the mighty working of your strength, I pray that they would recognize that you exercise this power in Christ by raising him from the dead and seating him at your right hand in the heavens, far above every ruler and authority, power and dominion, and every title given not in this age, not only in this age, but also in the one to come. And that you subjected everything under the feet of Christ and appointed him as head over everything for the church, which is his body, the fullness of the one who fills all things in every way. I also ask that every government official be filled with the knowledge of your will through all wisdom and understanding that the Spirit gives, so that they may live a life worthy of the Lord and please you in every way. Where needed, convict them of sin, call them to repentance, and transform them into agents of your reconciliation. Most of all, guard and keep them safe. Protect their families, Lord. Pour out your blessing and favor on those who desire to honor and serve you, and root out and remove those who don't. I contend for all of these things because of your mercy, in accordance with your promises, and ultimately for your glory. In Jesus' name, amen. Thank you.
Thank you for your public comment. Elliot Harwell, followed by David Eigel.
Commissioners. I'll start by prefacing my comments by saying I fully intend to be critical of one or two of the commissioners. For starters, David Lovell's admonishment about civility is not the law or the rule of how this body operates. Two, I think it would probably be a violation of my First Amendment rights to limit my ability to speak to my elected representatives about my feelings about them. And three, I think it's kind of self-serving for David Lovell to stand up here and sit in that seat and talk about how it's unproductive and uncivil to have comments that address counselors particularly, when over the past 2 weeks, we've had a lot more information come out about his treatment of other employees and in the county. So I spoke to the council, to the board last month, 4 weeks ago. At the time, I drew attention to how David Lovell pushed out the previous county council with his incredibly bad behavior, how that resulted in a $250,000 settlement. And I theorized that this behavior was probably not limited to just one person, but it had affected other members of the county government. Since that time, Lookout Eugene Springfield has run an excellent article detailing even more allegations against David Lovell, that we know that there's at least 2 other HR investigations into him, that he's threatened of retaliation against those employees that have brought their concerns to HR, and that in fact he actually did retaliate against County Administrator Moker Heiske for protecting those employees by then giving Moker Heiske the lowest possible ranks on his most recent evaluation. Moker Heiske is a 10-year veteran serving as a county administrator and received extremely high marks from the other 4 members of this board. So it's kind of difficult to see that as anything other than retaliation. None of this particularly surprises me. I've never really thought highly of Commissioner Lovell. What I am surprised about, though, is Commissioner Farr's behavior at the last meeting 2 weeks ago, who, having received this email from Moker Heiske, thought that it was appropriate to open the last meeting by agreeing with David Lovell's admonishment against personal attacks. It makes it seem as if you actually are trying to cover for your fellow commissioner. I would really prefer that you took a stand and protected the people, the employees of this county, and your constituents by standing up to such a bully who has done incredibly bad things for this county and is going to cost this county hundreds of thousands of more dollars. You have a good day, sir.
Thank you for your public comment. David Eigel, followed by Lee Latrobe, please.
David Eigel. I was pleased to see that Michael Schill's dishonesty finally caught up with him. The Board of Trustees of Northwestern University recently gave him a one-way ticket on a streetcar named Disgrace. Mr. Schill not only lied about and defamed Professor Dunn, but many other Oregonians as well. I recently sent copies of the May 13, 1924 Eugene Morning Register to the members of the commission. In this front page article, the Reverend Frederick Jennings, the rector of St. Mary's Episcopal Church, while serving as a member of the Eugene School Board, acted as a forceful opponent of the Klan. He exposed their concealed actions in not rehiring any of the Catholic teachers. This was not hidden history. It was reported on the front page of the local paper. Yet the U of O Dunn report, a disgraceful, dishonest smear piece that was falsely presented as documented history, deceitfully describes the Reverend Jennings as an active Klansman. This lie, one of the many included in the U of O report, was then repeated in the Lane County History Museum's Disgraceful Racing to Change exhibit when Jennifer Ye was a director before being booted out. I've invested years of my life in documenting our local history. The management of the museum has refused to offer corrective information for past misinformation they have provided. I've sent you an example of a currently displayed piece of misinformation about our history. The management of the museum has declined to post any link to my works on the museum website. I'm sick and tired of non-native Eugenians and non-native Oregonians coming here and swapping lies about our history. I'll be making some suggestions to the county commissioners, and I hope you'll be able to take some affirmative action in influencing the corrective information that needs to be distributed, because so much misinformation has been put out at public cost and expense. Thank you.
Thank you. And lastly, we have Leela Trope, please.
I live in Springfield, and full disclosure, Commissioner Lovell is my person for representation, and I looked at the agenda, I've downloaded way too much stuff, and I don't have a printer at home that works, and so I kind of have to go off the cuff sometimes. But what I wanted to say is that I live in Eugene, my husband's getting older, he's not driving anymore, he's a bit infirm in his logic and thinking, and yet I look at young people who are illustrating the fact that if you guys don't all come together cohesively and decide that this person's more right than another person, and that person needs more time and attention because they're noisier and they make more noise. Isn't that pretty much where we've gone in this country with the most recent killing of a person who pretty much is a national hero, where we don't have civil discourse and we don't have responsibility? And I, for one, have to say that out of all the people that I appreciate having a good, solid give and take without being called names and trying to silence them by firing them, because, as Charlie Kirk said, when the talking stops, the fighting starts. And I encourage, no matter what people read about conversation, about talking, the accusations can get dangerous when people are considered to be, I don't agree with you, you're out of my mainstream, so I want you gone. And I don't think that that's what a county commissioner's board is supposed to do. There needs to be more give and take and less accusation, in my opinion. I think that Commissioner Farr does a great job. I think that Commissioner Lovell does a great job. And I think that Rural West, Commissioner Seneca does a great job. I've not followed you two gals as often, as much in what you're voting and what you're doing. But I need to get back on with this because of the fact that I personally feel vulnerable because of all the arguing, and everybody wants their opinion to be the last one heard. And down here at the Lane County Commissioners facility here, there have been a lot of irrational people coming in and demanding their way, and that's the wrong way to do it. And I think that we don't want Eugene to have any more discourse, fighting in the streets, destroying personal property. It's time for it to end.
Sorry, Leela, your time is up.
Can I just say one more thing about money?
It's up, Leela. I'm sorry. It's 3 minutes is all we get.
Okay.
Thank you very much. I've had a text that there's no one online. Is there anyone still left in Harris Hall that would like to give public testimony before we close this portion of the agenda item? Seeing none, let's move on to our next item. Thank you for all your public testimony. For those who came and took time out of their day to come here in person, we thank you very much. Our next item is our item 6, our consent calendar. All items listed here are routine by the Board of County Commissioners and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items. If a discussion was desired, that item would have been removed from the consent calendar and would have been considered separately. Details to each item can be found in the blue links attached to the item descriptions. Could I have a motion on the consent calendar?
Chair, I move to approve the consent calendar for September 23rd, 2025.
And a second.
I'll second.
Thank you. It's been moved by Vice Chair and seconded by Commissioner Buck to approve the consent calendar. All those in favor signify.
Chair Lovell?
Yes.
There are several items on the consent calendar that if we'd had more time, I would have pulled. I'll make an announcement now that I'll talk about these items in the items from Commission later on this morning.
Okay, so.
Important items that involve appointing members to committees.
Oh, okay. All right. It's been moved by Vice Chair and seconded by Commissioner Buck to approve the consent calendar for Tuesday, September 23rd. I'll call for the vote. All those in favor signify with an aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Motion passes 5-0 for the consent calendar. Thank you very much. Let's move on to our county administration item. We have our first report of the day from the Travel Lane County. It's a semi-annual report. Samara Phelps, the president and CEO of Travel Lane County, and her crack team of Travelus people are with us, including Mr. Andy Vabora. How are you, sir? Good, and you're getting your presentation on the screen by Jessica. Thank you very much for helping. So whenever you are ready to go, you may start.
Wonderful, thank you. Good morning, Chair Lovell, Vice Chair Seneca, and Commissioners. Thank you for the opportunity to present the formal annual report from Travel Lane County's work in fiscal year 25. As you know, my name is Samara Phelps. I'm President and CEO of Travel Lane County. Travel Lane County is the destination organization for Lane County, marketed as Eugene, Cascades, and Coast. Our mission is to grow the overnight visitors for a vibrant, year-round, and county-wide economy. And we are your partner in stewarding the sustainability of the transient lodging tax and its impactful investments here in Lane County. It's my privilege to serve all of Lane County, and I do this work under the guidance of our board of directors. Dana Terrell of the Terrell Group concluded her term as chair in June, and Sarah Smith of Incline Management began her term in July, with John Borofsky of Beppe and Gianni's stepping in the vice chair role. Your investment of TLT in Travel Lane County as your destination marketing contractor delivers strong stewardship of community through collaboration as we generate an economic return. As you heard from the testimony earlier, our hotel partners are an important part of that, but our board is made up of many representatives throughout the community. And we want the work of our professional staff team to strengthen your knowledge and connections to the communities that we serve. To ensure you have the information on the industry, our programs, and to foster those stronger connections to communities, we present annually an annual and a semi-annual report each year, and we also share board reports monthly with the details on the individual tactics and our program performances. And as always, we are available to you and to Lane County staff as a resource. In the interest of that partnership and information sharing, today I will share some industry insights on trends for context on what is impacting our local communities, businesses, and employees, along with highlights of how we are addressing these trends. So, what does the visitor economy contribute to Lane County? Tourism and hospitality supports 1 in 9 jobs here in Lane County. That's nearly 11,000 residents and their families relying on the visitor economy for their paychecks. And visitor spending, as you heard in public testimony, topped $1 billion in 2024 again, and that generated $53 million in state and local tax revenue, as reported in Dean Runyon's 2024 report. But what does $1 billion in spending mean? It is, of course, hotel nights and meals out, but it's also $117 million in arts and entertainment spending, as well as $135 million in retail. And so what does that mean for our residents? Well, it's support for our favorite restaurants, shops, and artists, and along with a great vibe at the events venues that we love to participate in. All right, so where is the visitor? Often we lump a visitor or visitor spending into lodging. Lodging we talk about a lot, but visitors experience Lane County in hundreds of ways, and many never even stay in a hotel. The data that you see here is location data from Zardico that shows more visitors at outdoor recreation and retail points of interest than in a hotel. Transient lodging tax, often referred to as TLT, is a direct connection between the visitor, the county, local services, local communities, and us at Travel Lane County. So this chart here shows the transient lodging tax that was collected in Lane County since 2019. Fiscal year 24 was the first full year of collecting the additional 2% for tourism infrastructure. This number was adjusted down from the estimate that was shared at last year's annual report to reflect the actual collection and a correction in distribution. FY25 listed here is an estimate, as the county will not receive that last quarter of TLT until late October or early November. It is anticipated to be below last year's collection. TLT in Lane County directly supports the entities listed on the side there. It includes the Lane Event Center, Lane County History Museum, grants and economic development, in addition to Lane County parks and distributions to each of our communities in Lane County. So every stay here in Lane County is directly supporting these community assets that enhance the quality of life for Lane County residents to enjoy. Traveling County receives 2.1 points of that to drive demand as your destination marketing contractor. In fiscal year 24, this was about 4.2 million, and it's estimated to be about 4 million in fiscal year 25. Traveling County is the only recipient that its mission is dedicated to the fund's health and stability. So while visitors and visitor spend happens in a variety of business, transient lodging tax is collected off of the stays in hotels and short-term rentals. So lodging statistics are extremely helpful tools in understanding our destination's performance, the trends, and the overall health of the industry here in Lane County. Demand for hotel rooms was up in fiscal year 25, and the increase was below the state growth in demand. This is common among many I-5 corridor destinations where below the statewide growth is being reported, and it's attributed to the decreases in business travel and the Canadian traveler. Lower daily rates result in the anticipated decrease in TLT collections for FY25. Daily rate and revenue is influenced by global markets as well as local events. Here in Lane County, the reopening of the Valley River Inn and the opening of the new Town Place Suites impacted this. This means that there are 350 more rooms available in our market in fiscal year 25 than in the previous year. And this is great. Additional rooms are very positive for the community and the industry, but it is a significant change year over year reflected in your statistics. So here it is. This is our challenge and our opportunity. In our market, the challenge is winter. It is no surprise to this room that $1 billion in visitor spending does not come in even distributions. The visitor industry has a deep trough with an average hotel occupancy in winter of 48% compared to a summer occupancy of 77%. Like many communities across Oregon, Lane County faces the significant economic challenge during the winter months. This results in reduced hours for our 11,000 employees and challenges for local businesses and operators. So to ensure a vibrant and county-wide year-round economy, we must keep those residents employed year-round and activities for locals and visitors to do throughout the year. This means investing in infrastructure that gives people a reason to visit in winter and drives that demand. Sports tournaments and events could be part of this. TLT is a vital tool in making these investments. So that's the economic climate. Beyond the seasonality, beyond the economic climate, our communities and our businesses are also impacted by a policy environment. Traveling County monitors and communicates the industry impacts of policy and informs policymakers as well as our operators. So in fiscal year 25, the state legislature made some much needed corrections to landowner immunity, helping secure access to recreation for both public and private entities. That was a much needed change, but Oregon's current climate around recreational liability is a huge threat to the industry. Outdoor recreation plays a significant role in Lane County's 4,700 square miles of beautiful landscape. But Oregon's current liability waiver standards threatens the ability of our local businesses, outdoor groups, nonprofits, and others to provide recreation and fitness opportunities to residents and visitors. And I would be remiss if I missed this opportunity to convey the risk that the current liability waiver standard puts them in and the competitive disadvantage it leaves us with Washington and California as our neighbors. Aligning Oregon with the Western states levels the playing field while continuing to provide individual protections from grossly negligent behavior on the part of a business. This state policy change is needed to support our local rural economies, local businesses, and access to recreation for residents and visitors. And I wanted to make sure you were aware of that climate. In addition, Traveling County staff and board continues to work closely with policymakers to share the benefits of the tourism economy and the experiences it supports for our residents. The diverse recipients and the community benefits are critical points for policymakers to understand to ensure that this fund of transient lodging tax remains resilient and a reliable tool for economic vitality in all of our communities. From the past presentations, I also know that the Eugene Airport is a vital asset of interest to this commission. The much needed and long overdue improvements to the Eugene Airport have encountered significant roadblocks to access funding. This work is led by the airport director, Catherine Stevens, and a collective effort along with creative solutions involving engagement from all local and regional partners will be needed to keep this asset thriving in our community. All right, there's the climate, there's the trends, that's the environment that we're all operating in. And now that I've shared that and what we saw in fiscal year 25, I'd like to dive into what we did. The printed report that you were provided earlier shares many more details and many more projects than what I'm able to share today, but I'd like to share these highlights with you. And knowing that winter is our need and our opportunity, we are taking on winter. Traveling County's top priority is solving for this winter demand. For more than 10 years, an indoor multi-use facility that incorporates sports tournaments and events has been identified as a key part of the solution. Feasibility and pro forma studies for a regional sports complex have already been completed, and success stories from across the Pacific Northwest show how effective these investments can be. The board, the Traveling County Board, that is, in fiscal year 25, reconfirmed that facility is essential to sustaining the visitor economy and committed to being a champion of transformational infrastructure development. A roadmap for facility development was created, and work to identify site, owner, operator, and partners has restarted. This included Traveling County's participation in the Lane Event Center's visioning process, building on past work and facility needs in the community. That process illustrated clear intersections with the community values for the event center and for facility development in general. And while facility development will be transformational, the staff team and our industry partners are not waiting for this leap in transformation in our community to make an impact. In fiscal year 25, our Explore campaign was refined to focus on winter arts, festivals, and whale watching. And as residents, we know it's a great place to visit any time of year and can name a handful of reasons quickly. I think last year, even in this presentation, someone said it sells itself. But as residents, we know that getting out in winter often takes a little extra effort. Our marketing strategies are taking on that little extra effort challenge, and we are investing in paid media to do the hard work to boost winter demand in our always-on drive and fly markets in Oregon, Washington, and California. Open to all. Advocates, nonprofits, and agencies across Lane County have been at the forefront of accessibility for decades, and this legacy has continued to grow. Florence was among the first cities in Oregon to be destination verified by Wheel the World, a travel site dedicated to the information travelers with disabilities need to know. Thanks to Florence's leadership, 47 sites were inventoried, and then this spring, an additional 17 sites here in Eugene, Springfield, and the surrounding areas were added through Traveling County's work. Lane County is now verified as a destination with Wheel the World. And just yesterday, so this is hot off the presses, Travel Oregon announced that Oregon's designation as the first destination verified state in the world with Wheel the World. And we were an integral part of that. Because access is not just about compliance, it's about hospitality and community, the Traveling County Board this year, as well as staff, completed the visitable training and This is a program that we will roll out to all of our 650 members in fiscal year 26. Partners across the county are proactively making our destination more accessible and improving the experience for visitors of all abilities and backgrounds to have meaningful and welcoming experiences here. One guest at the Paranational Championships hosted this July at Hayward Field stopped by our booth to share that Eugene was the most accessible city she had ever visited. And while we hope reviews like this continue to roll in, we know that when the review is not as glowing, our community is also prepared to continue to improve. A big part of our work is sales, and our convention and meetings bookings directly tied to Travel Lane County's work totaled $2 million in economic impact, and 2/3 of those confirmed bookings this year are new to the destination, and several of them are during that much-needed winter season. After a staff opening in convention sales in the fiscal year 25, we are excited to welcome Heidi Albertson back to our community as our sales manager for fiscal year 26. And we are already seeing huge wins from her wealth of destination knowledge and sales knowledge. The most significant change in Lane County's convention offerings is the return of the remodeled Valley River Inn, including renovated meeting space, guest rooms, and riverside dining at Sweetwater's. Now this, alongside with downtown's Eugene Graduate Hotel and Conference Center, gives meeting planners 2 unique meeting venues with on-site rooms, food and beverage, and stellar service. Another significant change on the horizon for our convention space is the hotel development at the Florence Event Center continuing to move through its development process. This is very exciting for that community. So, partnering. Our mission is to drive overnight stays for that vibrant year-round countywide economy we all want. To ensure our work is responsive to the communities we serve, staff work with each of our rural communities through local tourism committees and community-driven projects. These connections are opportunities for learning and sharing local insights and data to support impactful and aligned efforts at the county and local level. This year's collaborative work included 2 projects that solidify our Cascade communities of Oak Ridge and West Fir and the McKenzie River corridor as cycling destinations. The Oak Ridge pump track, pictured here, was built and opened this year. This project was partially funded by Travel Lane County's destination development efforts. And after 15 years of dedicated work among community partners, cycling advocates, and land managers, and not to mention the tireless leadership from Travel Lane County's Executive Vice President, Natalie Inouye, the After Heidi has been designated as an Oregon Scenic Bikeway, connecting the McKenzie River corridor to West Fir for cyclists. Community connections are the core of our work. Travel Lane County's membership grew by 20%, with 650 members across the county actively engaging and leveraging tools to support their businesses. We honored 6 dedicated partners at the Visitor Industry Celebration in May, including Johnny Helfrich of Helfrich Outfitters with a Legacy Award for her dedicated service to the McKenzie River and the communities. The dedication of these partners and businesses is what makes Lane County a destination grounded in community. And to ensure that we continue to be a visitor economy that is grounded in quality of life for our communities, this year, together with stakeholders and residents, we are creating a destination master plan for Lane County. In June, we onboarded JLL, an international expert in tourism, as our partner in creating a 10-year vision for the tourism across the county. This will be built by the community. It will define how tourism can support economic development, sustainability, and community well-being across every corner of the region. So, learning all of this in fiscal year 25, these 4 goals remain the priority for the coming year. To reduce seasonality and grow winter demand, to engage the community in linking the visitor economy and quality of life, to strengthen Travel Lane County's position as a trusted leader and partner, and to grow our reputation as an inclusive destination. So what's ahead? As commissioners, staff, and active community members, there are several ways that you can contribute to communities strengthening through tourism. The first is to engage and be a part of that destination plan. There will be opportunities to promote participation and to join in the process. Another is to activate facility development that reduces seasonality. An indoor facility would help attract winter tourism, support local businesses, and stabilize year-round employment. This transformational investment requires public and private commitment, investment, and time. Last month, Traveling County dedicated $2 million to a multi-use facility that generates overnight stays. We've also contracted with Sports Facility Company to update the market analysis and identify what attributes are needed for a facility that generates overnight stays. This information will inform development on any site, new build or adaptive reuse. We do not know where this site will be. We just know that this is needed in our community and we need to be a champion. So we are actively exploring opportunities countywide. Right now, we're excited to have 2 active sites being explored. That includes the Lane Event Center and the work led by your team there, as well as an opportunity in North Gateway for adaptive reuse. And the third thing that you can do to help support tourism is to get out and explore our destination just like a visitor. And better yet, invite a friend, a colleague, or a neighbor to join you. If you need inspiration, visit our new visitor center in the 5th Street Market Alley. Photo here, just opened on Friday. Free maps, information, and inspiration are available 7 days a week to visitors and residents alike. So with that, we are proud of the work that we have been able to accomplish in this last year with our community partners. But there are challenges ahead. There are economic headwinds facing every one of our partners. Lane County communities, businesses, and employees need the county to use every tool available to help. Focusing investments on winter demand is a long-term win for our economy and for the quality of life here in Lane County. Traveling County would welcome the opportunity to collaborate on some strategic investment and projects with the TLT currently being collected for tourism infrastructure and projects. A possible first step would be a work session with staff or board to share information, ask questions, and explore what these opportunities could mean. A vibrant countywide and year-round economy does not happen without these coordinated and collective actions, and Traveling County is here as a partner to help take action and inform decisions. Thank you for your time today. I look forward to our continued work together and ask at a future meeting that the board work with staff to extend our contract for an additional year as outlined in our grant agreement. And with that, I am happy to address any questions or comments with the board.
Wonderful presentation. Thank you, Ms. Samara. Thank you, Andy, for yielding the slides so professionally. Good job. To the board. Yes, Commissioner Farr.
Thank you, Samara. You know, one thing I regret is not working more closely with you. I first joined the CVALCO board in 1995. I've not been on it since then, but I spent the last 11 years until just recently on the board, working closely with Andy and with other staff members who are sitting in the audience. And I really miss it. You know, the work that you do is so inspirational, and not just to the people sitting in this room, not the people living in Lane County, but you bring so much in. And the vision that you are bringing forward, with big shoes to fill, needless to say. You know, Carrie was there for a long, long time, and you're filling those shoes very admirably. I'm going to get to the nugget in just a second, by the way, but I'm going to first say that you're doing a superb job. I'll say that right up front. I hear from Andy Vibora, I hear from my sister, and I hear from the world that you're doing a superb job. The nugget is the last thing that you said, almost the last thing that you said, a work session with staff and board. I'm going to encourage that, look forward to that, because hearing the presentations, we have a chance to just pontificate for a few moments about Travel Lane County and discuss for a few moments the merits of the work and the asks that you have. But in a work session, we could really dig into how can we partner ever more closely with Travel Lane County and with your board in particular, because if we look at your board of directors, oh my goodness, it's a who's who in who brings people into Lane County. A very significant board of directors that you have. So with that, Chair, I'm not going to say much more about Travel Lane County and the work that you do, because there's so much you do. From the volcanoes to the lighthouse, you know, it's a remarkable work that you do. But I'm going to ask for a work session with staff and board. Probably won't come in the very near future, but to get it on the, on the agenda for the future, I think it's imperative that we do that. So thank you for that ask. Thanks for saving it for last, because that way I could speak it out when it was more fresh in my mind. So thanks again for being here.
Thank you for your continued support.
It's right there.
Mr. Trigger.
Thank you. I'll be brief. Thank you for the presentation. It's always good to hear about the good work being done. I'm really excited about the designation for the accessibility work. Providing diversity, equity, and access to folks with limited mobility. It's a great thing. I just wanted to provide some clarification or ask a question when you talked about the airport expansion.
Yep.
And you said, quote, significant roadblocks to access funding. And I just want it to be really clear, that is the federal grant that was rescinded, or the terms were changed with the current administration of money that had been promised to the city of Eugene for airport expansion.
Correct.
Thank you.
Mr. Buck.
It's always great to see you. I like to always find something that I hadn't heard before. Really excited about Wheels of the World. That was something I didn't know that you were working on, and pretty exciting to know that we were the first one to do that, and yay. And
it was a lift.
It was, yeah, I bet it was. And it will likely reverberate in different communities around the nation. And so you've made a roadmap, basically, for other communities to see what we're doing and see how to incorporate it in their own communities. I think that's really, really wonderful. I loved seeing the pictures of the Offer-Heidi Scenic Bikeway grand opening. That was a lovely day, and it was nice to see everybody on their bikes and out and about. So I really appreciate all the time and effort it took you and your board members to make that a reality. I know that the area is so appreciative of the designation. Tourism is such a big deal upriver, and that's just another way to celebrate the area, and you got a good shot.
You saw us work for that shot, too.
I did see you. That took a little doing, but it was worth it, I think. And hopefully it will be used to celebrate more activity upriver as well.
Yeah, we've heard from the land managers that cycling is up on the Offer-Heidi, so it is working.
Excellent. Excellent work.
Thanks for your support.
Vice Chair.
Yes. Smart. Great presentation. That was excellent. And I will also compliment you, Andy. Well done with the slides. Nailed it.
Sometimes that's the hardest job.
We see this. We know. I want to kind of reiterate what Commissioner Farr said. I think this would be a great work session. I was taking down notes and I had ideas, and I would love to hear everybody's thoughts and just kind of workshop this and bounce ideas back and forth. I know I went to a family reunion and a Basque festival in Idaho, and I left there very excited about what can be done with some of the resources they have. And to be honest, we are sitting on a gold mine if we do it right. The Boise River is, every inch of it is utilized, bike paths and ADA accessible and kayaking, and just, they've really leaned into it. And then we also went to a ski resort up there, and it was an hour and 15 minutes away. But they had a whole summer session they did that they used the lifts, and the mountain biking was just incredible what some of those athletes were doing. And we have all that here, and we don't utilize it. And it's an hour and 15 minutes away from here. It's about the same drive. It's a beautiful drive in the summer. So it would be a fun topic to really lean into and to start, finding out what everybody's priorities are and what we can do to better utilize this stuff. So thank you for all the hard work. We appreciate it. And I think we're just beginning this process here.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah, once again, it's always good to see you. I see you on a bi-weekly basis, all of you, so it's good to be on that committee as well. I love serving on that committee. $1 billion business is nothing to sneeze at. $1 billion business moves a lot of entities in this county and maintains a lot of entities in this county. It maintains a quality of life that we all like in this county too. So I want to make sure that people know about that. But I'm also fairly excited, and I'm joining forces with Vice Chair and Commissioner Farr on this work session idea. I think this is something, the only thing I disagree with is I think we should do it sooner than later. I think there's some opportunities ahead that I know of that perhaps we can talk a little bit about today that are happening for Travel Lane County. The reuse facility that we're looking at right now, I think is exceptionally exciting. And I think some of those answers that we're seeking are going to be coming to us in the next 6 weeks or so. And it would be good, possibly, Mr. Mokraitsky, if we could schedule this work session a little sooner than later so we could meet that timing opportunity, because like most things in business, opportunity comes knocking, but if you don't answer the door, it goes to some other door. So I think this is one of those things that we could move fairly quickly on to get some help that would really put this project ahead of itself. Anything do you want to add to that? Am I probing a little too lightly, or should I ask a direct question here?
No, I think you're doing just fine there. Yes, so for folks who are not serving directly on the board but do have access to the board packets, the two sites that are actively being explored right now for a multi-use facility include the work that has been done with the Lane Event Center and the visioning and the work that's happening there under your team's leadership. And then an opportunity presented itself to explore the Royal Caribbean site that's there in North Gateway as a potential adaptive reuse for multi-use that could generate those overnight stays, specifically regional sports tournaments. So we have worked with the sports facility company, who is a entity that we collectively have all worked with in the past to do some facility assessments for the community, to outline for us what a regional sports facility would need to entail in our community to deliver those economic impacts that we want. And so we will hear that by October 18th. We'll have that information from them. So yes, this opportunity for the adaptive reuse of a site does have a timeline that is kind of mid-November gating event, and then another one in February.
So would it be good for us to maybe, Mr. Mokraitsky, put some sort of request or a placeholder and maybe having Travel Lane County come back to the board with some updates after that mid-October or the 1st of November kind of time frame for us to maybe look at that adaptive reuse site? The adaptive reuse site is, from a perspective in a real estate mind, is an exceptional opportunity, if I can just say so myself. The 20-acre site and the building, if we can adapt it the way that we're thinking, could save at least half of what it would cost to build the facility from scratch. Not only that, as it's perfectly located with hotels around it. So obviously most real estate and development deals have a lifespan of which we can have this opportunity. So would it be prudent for the board to hear something back from Travel Lane County in 6 or 8 weeks?
Certainly could.
Yes, Commissioner Trieger.
What is the county's role in that?
Well, the county's role.
What's the urgency for the county to hear an update?
The county's role is we haven't really identified what that 2% TLT money is going to do. It's still collecting, and I think it's kind of irresponsible for us as a board to have this money that we could invest in our community, and it's just sitting there undecided. I think we should start a discussion about what that money could be used for to invest in this billion-dollar industry, because frankly, if you look at the other statistics around, there's a good handful of businesses leaving Lane County because of just all the other factors of cost. So I think the tourism industry is a viable investment industry that would return on our investment worthy dollars that are just right now sitting in our bank. Yes, Commissioner Buck.
I think this is leading into a whole nother conversation. So I'm sorry to keep you here, but I think if we're going to have a larger discussion about what we want to do and where we want to invest our TLT money, we should have that work session. And and have the community input on what they want to do. And so I would certainly be supportive of having a larger conversation about what we want to do there. But I think without that conversation first, we would be jumping the gun. And I certainly want to be supportive. I don't know what the timeline is. This is news to me. I've not heard any of this before. So I think we should, broaden that conversation when the time comes. And I don't know what you mean by this, Commissioner Farr, because I haven't heard it.
And conversation that has nothing to do with today's presentation.
I'm just sharing because this has been brought up and this is new information. So I find your reaction unprofessional.
Okay.
Oh, boy.
All right, so anything else to add? Vice Chair, you good? Okay. Well, Samara and Andy, thank you so much for the presentation. If there's anything else you want to add, now would be a good time to do that. But I think we've got some ideas to further at least the discussion of what you presented going forward.
Yeah, thank you for the active discussion. And the last thing that I would just like to add is a recognition of Andy's service. This will be the last annual report as Andy is retiring in this fiscal year. So
congratulations, sir.
Celebration for that excellent slide work among the many other things he's contributed.
We're going to miss you greatly on the slide work there, Andy. Good for you. Yes, Commissioner Farr.
In danger of being less than professional, I want to relive my best Andy Vobora moment is 1979. John Elway was a freshman, and you beat Stanford that day.
I'd just like to say, Commissioner Lovell, Commissioners, thank you. I've had the privilege of serving on the Travel Lane County Board for 12 years while I was at LTD, and then spending 10 years now, roughly, with the staff team and the board of directors. And it's been a pleasure. It's a great organization, worked with great people. But I want to recognize you all for your service. You know, we come here and we think our topic is the most important. I can say that now because you can't fire me. But it's not, probably, right? I mean, you guys deal with so much. And I don't think people recognize that. Their issue is always the most important issue, and I understand that. But really want to recognize you for your service and how hard it is to run a government that deals with so much. So thank you for your service, and it's been an honor. Thanks.
Thank you for those words, Andy. Appreciate you very much. We'll see each other on the...
Thanks for the time.
All right, good deal. We'll see each other soon. All right, our next item is our item B on our county administration docket, which is a report from our state and federal fiscal update folks. That would be Steve Adams, our policy director. Sir, how are you today?
I am well, Chair. Thank you.
As you get your slideshow in order, we'll let you do that, and then you can continue whenever you're ready, sir.
Chair and Commissioners, I'll just share as Steve is pulling that up. We wanted to do this presentation today as sort of a broad, you have a number of discussions that have come before you and are coming before you. A couple weeks ago, you heard about from various Lane County public safety agencies talking about the loss of Community Corrections Act funding from the state. We have about an $8 million hole from that. You're going to hear later in this meeting about an update on our community health centers and changes and significant concerns, some of which you've seen reported on recently related to our community care organization and those that are, and the questions about coverage for Medicaid eligible individuals in the community. You're also going to have a presentation today about reductions, expected reductions from the state in shelter beds. So, you know, there's a lot happening in terms of particularly state and federal dollars that are being reduced. Of course, we know the challenges we have here in Lane County with limited local funds, particularly property taxes. And the fact that our property tax growth is not keeping up with our expenditure growth, which creates the gap in our general fund every year. But as an organization that is heavily reliant on federal and state dollars, 60% of our over $1 billion annual budget comes from the federal and state government. As those priorities change and as that funding declines, it results in declines, right? The impacts flow downhill. And so we wanted to have this sort of broader overview for you. So I just want to share that this is to The presentation that Mr. Adams is going to provide today is intended to be sort of a high-level overview to set the stage for a number of conversations we're going to have, so that we're keeping in mind, you know, it's not just CCA dollars, it's not just our community health centers and Medicaid impacts, it's not just state dollars for shelter beds, it's all those things and multiple other things that we're tracking, public health, state dollars for public health. So we just want to paint that broad picture that we have a number of things that, and as requests come forward, particularly for investment of limited general fund dollars that we're also short on, that we're keeping in mind, we simply don't have the resources to fill all the holes that are being created. So that's not a fun narrative, and this is tough information to share, but we do want you to have as much of the complete picture as possible. So, Mr. Adams.
Okay. Chair and Vice Chair and Commissioners, thank you. I'm grateful to the County Administrator for the introduction. Chair, I'm Steve Adams, the Policy Director, and here to brief you on this federal and state fiscal update. We're 7 days or so ahead of the end of the federal fiscal year 2025. Over the course of this federal fiscal year, from looking back about a year, and this is going to be kind of a bit of a narrative over time in terms of what we're looking at, we've seen a pretty significant reduction in our kind of fiscal position, both at the state level and here at the local level as well. And so just really amplifying the county administrator's point just a moment ago in introduction, Wayne County here, as you see in the middle dial, is 60% reliant on federal and state funds. Specifically, just upstream of us is the state of Oregon. Theirs is 31% reliance. And I'm including here the average Oregon not-for-profit organization, which is 19% of their revenue is reliant on federal and state funds. And that's germane just in terms of thinking about the service delivery environment here within Oregon more broadly and here locally within Wayne County specifically. A separate Urban Institute analysis recently found that 67% of Oregon not-for-profits cannot make their budget balance without infusions of federal funds coming in specifically. So it's an important way that we provide services to the people that we serve. So over the course, really just as I noted, our kind of fiscal position has eroded over the last several months, and really some of the drivers here in 2025 have been really kind of a series of actions. So certainly on the executive branch, we've been tracking executive orders, we've been tracking rescissions, and so that's a fancy way of saying we're pulling money back that was previously appropriated. And we've seen a wholesale change in grant terms and conditions associated with federal funds coming into the states and into localities. And each of those have had a number of different impacts as well, and I'll dig a little deeper into that. And then in parallel, we've been seeing changes within Congress, and so legislative actions of note. Certainly, the Congress passed H.R. 1. The president referred to this as the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, and Chair, I'll use the acronym OBA as it was actually named the One Big Beautiful Act in the title before it was signed off on by the President of the Senate and the Speaker. Then H.R. 4, the Rescissions Act of 2025 is another piece, and where we sit right now is the Federal 26 Appropriations Act, so to keep the federal government open 8 days from now. So those have not been passed, to kind of cut to the chase. So specifically, diving in on some of the impacts that we've seen. So of course, this board has been well briefed in previous updates with respect to previously awarded and obligated funds that were rescinded by the federal government. There was the $19.5 million EPA grant. The chair and the vice chair advocated for the restoration of those funds earlier this year. We've seen another $4.2 million in FEMA BRIC funds rescinded. And another $5.3 million grant. So in total, $29 million worth of obligated dollars coming in the current fiscal year were pulled back specifically. We've had additional grant reductions as well. So 2 critical ones, and one just that Ms. Moody, our budget director, brought to you this morning. The Violence Against Women Act, VAWA, and Victims of Crime Act, VOCA. We received only 40% of the typical allocations of those dollars because they've been held back at the federal level, and the dollars that we did receive, in fact, were previously appropriated, federal dollars previously allocated, I should say, to the state of Oregon and sitting within the Oregon Department of Justice grant. That is a material impact as well. And then we've not had access because of other potential changes in federal funding requirements, and others more broadly within county government have been impacted as well. Our airport was slated to receive funds, and that is not going to move forward. We've not been able to apply for Federal Department of Justice. The COPS grant has been an important funding source for us over the years. We've been able to receive congressionally directed spending from that pot, and we've been able to receive kind of competitive funds as well. In total, about $410 billion is has federal fiscal year 25 money has been frozen at the national level. Across a wide range of different kinds of programs. And that is having impacts on states, on localities, and on not-for-profits. Here locally, we've heard that Catholic Community Services has reduced their food box access for families. They're down to 1 box a week now per family. And they're highly reliant. 80% of their budget is federal funds coming through. So you'll see more of those sorts of issues as we go. As we all were navigating the first several months of 2025, the Oregon legislature was in session, received a governor's recommended budget at the beginning of session, and we had kind of a co-chair framework in terms of what we thought were likely to be the appropriation marks across the board for the upcoming biennium, 2025 through 2027. We appropriate, as you well know, 2-year cycles. And as we came into the May timeframe, the end of the session in which Joint Ways and Means really kicks into gear and begins to do the final allocations, we got the updated revenue forecast, and $755 million in terms of projected funds disappeared from that projection, leaving Joint Ways and Means with a significant reduction in resources across the board. So they're trying to read tea leaves. This is a dynamic analysis of Oregon's economy or tax revenues, what receipts were going to come in, and what federal funds could come in. So it's a little bit of a forecast, right? It's an economics forecast, but nonetheless, $755 million was not allocated, and we're now seeing the impact specifically. We got a much smaller allocation for Community Corrections Act, OHA allocations across the board that we were hoping for did not come in, and we're coping with many of those kinds of challenges. And in fact, one of the reductions that we saw was even in priority issues like shelter funding, specifically, in which the legislature and the governor had articulated as a real challenge. So that's where we were when we came out of session, when the legislature sine died in June. And this slide is, I'm not wanting you to see specifically how big it is, or the line items here, but what really matters is just the bottom line here of $39.1 billion in terms of the lottery and the general fund. And how that then rolls in, that's the yellow column in the middle there, $39.1 billion for 2 years, of which that adds up to some other funds, and then $43 billion in federal funds for the $138 billion budget. That's what the legislature appropriated. And then the legislature recognized, and part of why there was kind of austerity across the board was an allocation of $800 million to the E-Board. And the appropriation to the E-Board, you'll see the top line there was $100 million in discretionary funds for the E-Board to put into kind of plugging gaps wherever they might arise. And then you see a series of special purpose appropriations for typical issues, including fire and disaster recovery, which have been big budget drivers here in Oregon for the last several years. So that kind of $800 million was the kind of, walking around money, if you will, for the biennium for the legislature to be able to kind of meet gaps as they might occur, in addition to the appropriations. So OBA passes, the president signs the bill, and the folks in Salem begin to get to work to try to understand specifically what the impacts are of the big beautiful bill to Oregon. So Oregon is one of 7 states in which our state income tax, both for the individual side and the federal and the business side, the corporate income tax, are automatically connected to the IRS. So any changes at the federal determination of what your taxable income is flows immediately down to the state of Oregon. So you see that in August, we get a calculation from the State Department of Revenue, and this isn't dynamic. This is just looking at the tax code and making a determination about if the rules change, how much less money comes in. And you see that $972 million, nearly another $1 billion in the current biennium would disappear immediately from the tax rolls. And so you see in this analysis the line items, $81 million for the state and local tax limitation, that's a reduction. $79 million in revenue less associated with tips. So the HR 1 is not taxing the first $25,000 of tips that servers or bartenders or others who work for tips receive. And so you see that on the business side as well, the individual line items. So again, this is a static analysis. This doesn't look at like what do people do with those dollars that they're not paying to invest back into the economy. So then DAS then kind of built on that. So that's just the revenue coming in. There's also programmatic changes within the One Big Beautiful Bill. And you see the net fiscal impact for the state of Oregon across these specific line items in total $1 billion in the current fiscal, in the current biennium for Oregon. And you see these ramp up over time. It's a $1 billion in the 25-27, but that's a 5.7 in the 27-29. And this is a function of the timing in which some of the programmatic changes come online. The biggest drivers here, of course, are associated with Supplemental Nutrition and Assistance Program. This is SNAP is food assistance for families in need. And then Medicaid as well, $490 billion in the current biennium, moving up to $4.3 billion in the out years moving forward. You see smaller line items here, and I'll speak the Marine Fisheries team. That particular line item is a 30% reduction to Lane County Sheriff's Office, specifically because the Oregon Marine Board had to allocate a reduction associated with the bill. Also not in the bill, and we were really disappointed, is the renewal of SRS, the Safe Rural Schools chair. And that was in the House bill. It did not, Secure Rural Schools, thank you. It did not show up in the Senate side, so it fell out there. The Senate has passed a separate reauthorization, but we're not there. It hasn't been passed by the House, and it's not likely to be taken up in the current session of Congress, is what we think. I know, Chair, you're on the Association for ONC Counties, and we've talked to the staff there, and we know that you're looking specifically at some additional language within the bill that has to do with long-term contracts and whether or not dollars associated with that are going to get swept into the Treasury, as the bill suggests, or if we continue to see the receipts to counties. So that's a change, and Senator Wyden has weighed in on that with BLM and the Forest Service, asking them to clarify their interpretation of that law.
Yeah, our next meeting on that is Thursday.
I'm going to want to see your notes, Chair. Thank you. Let's see. So here we go. Those were initial analysis, and then we get to September of 2025. So we're almost to the current timeline. And just 3 weeks ago, the state economist was able to turn the crank on the latest economics for the state of Oregon. And these are the dynamic kind of assessments here. And you'll see, and I'm just grabbing straight screenshots from the state economist's briefing for the joint revenue committees of the legislature, looking at what is likely to happen with the tax provisions. So you see kind of a more dynamic and a more dialed in number, 888 million in the current biennium. And this is the official number that the legislature will be working from. There's one more revenue forecast in December of this year before the legislature goes into the short session. Governor Kotak advised agencies last week that they were going to start slowing down the relative rate of hire, looking specifically at FTE and whether they're required. She directed state agency staff to stop doing out-of-state travel. And she advised state agency heads to get ready for budget cuts. And so the Department of Admin Services is now preparing budget reduction documents for state agencies, and we anticipate seeing that. And we think the short session, which has been often for the last several cycles a place where we could go in and ask for plus-ups or additional appropriations where we were not as successful as we had hoped in the long session, I think this year it's going to be a different game. We're going to be defending rather than really for those kinds of shared state-county service delivery pots, of which there are many. As part of Oregon's process, we obviously have rainy day funds. We actually have two. We have specifically, well, this is the bottom line before I get to the rainy day funds. And if I just want to say, so with this latest forecast that we got, the official forecast, we are officially in deficit. Our general fund for the state of Oregon is underwater by $372 million. So of course we have to begin the process of tapping reserves to try to cover that up. We have to cut or we have to tap new revenue sources. So those are the options available to any appropriating body. So that's where Oregon stands. And our budget reserves here that are available, the two pots, as I was mentioning, the Education Stability Fund and the Rainy Day Fund, you see that in aggregate, they're about 10% of our general fund in terms of, from a statewide perspective, when I say we, I mean Oregon. That's what the legislature has to work from. And they're looking at multiple years over which they will need to allocate resources. All right, so that's what we know. We don't really know still quite a lot. There's still a lot we don't know. What we don't know is what are the policy changes that the legislature and the administration here in Oregon are going to make to the Medicaid program. So we have those reimbursement rate challenges that we're seeing. We're seeing the reduction in $490 million in available federal funds flowing into the state of Oregon in the 25-27 timeframe. We have to think specifically about how that's going to happen. So this is a care rationing exercise, and I'm not going to speak to that when Director Gray and Assistant Director Willis are in the room because they can run circles around me, obviously. But this is a real challenge, and we still have a lot of decisions to make as a state about what that's going to look like, and that will impact us here. The SNAP programmatic changes, providers are still working through the verification and other kinds of processes that they're going to have to implement, and those are going to drive new costs. So we don't know what those look like yet. And then the end of the Affordable Care Act subsidies, and this really is one of the key issues that is on the table right now. 140,000 Oregonians receive their health care insurance through the Affordable Care Act marketplace. A smaller proportion of those received enhanced federal subsidies, which the HR1 OBA removed at the end of this year. So this is a challenge that many, I think, members of Congress are very concerned about. Many red state members, majority members, are advocating for an extension of this particular provision. The enhanced subsidies go up to 400% of federal poverty level, so that's helping people with a family of four making $120,000. They're providing assistance for their monthly health care bill, and that's been in place for about 4 or 5 years. Many other states that did not do Medicaid expansion, as Oregon did, are much more reliant on this, and so that is a challenge. This may be one of the major issues around what is looking like today a federal government shutdown in 8 days' time. I think it is, the Senate did not entertain the House bill that was passed last Friday, and this figures to be one of the bigger issues. The other issue that is here, and I noted the Rescissions Act, H.R. 4, specifically. So rescissions is through existing law, the administration, if they choose not to spend something, they have to send a package to Congress, and Congress has to act. It's a simple majority in both houses, and they can vote to repeal or rescind a prior year's appropriation. And that's that passed in H.R. 4 on a simple majority basis. So that created some challenging dynamics, because on the Senate side, it takes 60 votes to pass any legislation. And so there really is this sense of, why should we work to build a bipartisan budget when there's the opportunity to rescind the dollars after the fact, right? And so this is kind of another dynamic of conversation within Congress. And then we have a pocket rescission, a so-called pocket rescission. So there's a 90-day clock on a rescissions package when it comes from the administration back to Congress. If you submit it within 90 days' time, it potentially runs out the clock, right? Congress doesn't have to act, and the money doesn't get spent. And this is a little bit, the Government Accountability Office does not believe this is a lawful use of that power, and we've never done this before. So we have a pocket rescission in action, and there is some discussion within Congress, both the House and the Senate, to try to kind of address this. And maybe whatever the continuing resolution that resolves the government shutdown will likely have some language within it to try to avoid what could be a constitutional crisis. So those federal 26, fiscal year 26 appropriations bills are pending now, and folks do believe specifically that we will have some period of a government shutdown. We have some concerns about some of our programs that we're working through, and I will say that our DC lobby team believes that a shutdown would likely be short, but who knows? All right, so this is not great news. We're challenged, obviously, and I'm sorry to be the staff person to bring all of this to you. What I think will be helpful from a staff perspective is direction from this board and advocacy from this board, really, in working with us. We, as I said, are expecting 2026 budget reductions, and we're already fighting uphill on appropriations in the current biennium that are not supporting our programs at the levels we're having to see reductions, as you're going to hear more about today and you've already heard about. So really kind of that advocacy as we go forward, if state agency budgets are shrinking, making sure that the counties aren't taking disproportionate reductions in those, right? Or that we're having more robust conversations about how we work more strategically to deliver the services to the people we serve. The needs in our community will not change. The access to health care will likely be less than what it was. The poverty and potentially the hunger will increase over this period of time. And we have to figure that out. We're still obligated to try to figure out how to meet those needs, and it will require us doing something different than we've perhaps done before. And working with state government as partners in this process will be more vital than ever. Opportunities for local revenue generation are essential, and they're more important than ever. This board is to be commended for the work you've done on the Public Safety Funding Commission and supporting that process and really kind of empowering staff to really explore what that looks like. We'll be looking at, in the short session, we have opportunities to go, again, we think, for the CAFA reform. County assessed, I can't remember what CAFA means, Chair, I'm sorry, but this is a property tax subsidy that we receive from the State Department of Revenue that helps to pay for our tax collection. So that is a process that our assessor has advocated for. We weren't able to get her bill over the finish line in the long session. We want to come back to that. And then there is a growing coalition of counties, cities, and our public safety partners looking specifically at TLT reform, and we believe that will likely go in the short session. So those are the pieces that we will be looking at and others as well. And then finally, the strategic partnerships piece, as we look specifically at how we work with our community-based organizations and our not-for-profit service providers. Many of our programs provide service in concert with them. We have to think differently about that. We're seeing reductions at the University of Oregon, and we're seeing it in our municipalities, and opportunities for us to work collaboratively and try to achieve better outcomes with less, I think, is the choice that's really before us. And with that, Chair, I am finished.
Great, thank you, Mr. Adams. Glowing reviews and good news. We'll find something in there that's good. To the board, any comments or questions for Mr. Adams? Yes, Commissioner Buck.
I have a question. I just want to make sure I'm reading some of these slides in the appropriate way. So I'm looking at the one that says Oregon revenue forecast for September 2025 with a negative 845.5 million. This is a change from COS forecast, and I'm not entirely sure what COS means.
Chair Level, Commissioner, COS means close of session, I'm sorry.
Close of session.
So that's where we were when the legislature Sonny died, and that was essentially the best information available at that moment.
Got it. So what we're anticipating is going into this next session with a negative 845.5 million in the budget forecast.
That is the reduction from the ending balance and the lost revenue in aggregate. So that's essentially saying we had 845 less than what they thought they did. And what that means is in net, because we had an ending balance, which sometimes gets reappropriated next year as other funds. The difference here is the 372. That's what's been appropriated by the legislature, but we don't have. We've written a check for more than what we have.
So going into the next long session, what are we seeing as the change, the total change that we're seeing as of today? Is that the 845 or the 372?
Chair, Commissioner, we have not seen the forecast that far out. So we don't yet know what the state economist is going to call. What we can say is what the higher level analysis are specifically. And we think that this revenue forecast is what we're likely to see just in terms of less money coming in. And this assumes that the legislature does nothing, right? So in 2017, the legislature did disconnect Oregon's income tax from the federal income tax for a short period of time. We reconnected as a state a few years later. So one of the choices that we could see that later this year is a special session in which the legislature decides to disconnect on one or more items associated with that. That would preserve some of the revenue in the 2025 tax year, but they would have to act by the end of this year in order for that to be relevant for the tax year. So if that, and there's no, next week is legislative days. Vanessa Cornwall, Ms. Cornwall, our intergovernmental affairs manager, is in the mix, and we're hearing that will be a topic of conversation next week.
So if we disconnect the state's income tax from the federal income tax, does that mean everybody who pays state income tax, that money stays here and nothing reverts back to the federal treasury? Or what are the implications exactly?
Chair Lovell, Commissioner, so it could be a partial disconnection or a full disconnection. And by the disconnection, it doesn't mean that we retain the federal, we'll still have to pay the federal. It just means we're not using the federal rules. So for instance, in this personal income tax, there's a line item associated with bonus depreciation that we've scored as 182.9 million. The Oregon legislature can say, we're not going to recognize that and we're going to tax that as we did last year. And that then would take 182 and turn that to zero. Do you see what I mean? We would pick and choose which of the federal rules that we want to do, or we would just not, for simplicity's sake, follow all the federal rules. We would set some of our own rules on taxable income, either on the personal side or on the corporate side.
It's a little bit complicated.
Indeed.
We're just back to the numbers, my initial numbers question. Going into the next legislative cycle, we're looking at the middle column, 27 and 29, and an adjustment as of now of a reduction in the budget of $468 million, plus whatever additional economic forecast we may receive at the time they make their final decision.
Chair Lovell, Commissioner, indeed, this is on the revenue side, and some of the revenue impacts are front-loaded. So the tax relief on tips and on overtime sunset after a couple of years, but then if you look specifically at the actual programmatic impacts, you see that these ramp up. So the cuts to Medicaid really ramp up more robustly. Sorry, you can't see the header there, 27, 29. So we'll see our problem right now is the loss in revenue as the federal programmatic changes are just ramping up. But as we get into the next biennium, we will see far less federal funds available to provide these services, meaning that general fund, as is the case often for the board, when you have priorities and other revenue sources dry up, you have to plug your gaps. Right, exactly. So this will suck more money out of other allocations.
Thank you.
Yes, Commissioner Trigger.
Thank you. Quick follow-up on the connect versus disconnect question. You said there might be a special, that can be done in a special session. What are the, if you know, what are the rules? Is that a simple majority of 3/5? Is it considered a tax measure? What is the, structurally, what are the options?
Chair Lovell, Commissioner, I do not know the answer to that. I think that would be the case, but I don't know. I would have to get back to the board on that answer. And I can look to our county counsel who may know.
I think the answer is exactly as Steve suggests. I think that would require a supermajority because it would be essentially increasing taxes as a result of exempting things. So I'm guessing that's how legislative council would opine.
And that would be done in a special session because it's time sensitive to the end of the calendar year or with the federal fiscal.
Chair Lovell, Commissioner, I believe that to be true.
Calendar
we
year
would need
because of
time.
tax year.
Precisely.
Right,
The Oregon Department of Revenue would need time to revise the mailer that we all get, right? And tell the tax software companies what the new changes are so they could help us.
Thank you.
I hear the collective sighs of digesting all this information. Commissioner Trier, go ahead.
Just one more, it's not, I've digested it. It's the agita from the digesting it that you're hearing me quiet about. Start bringing Pepto-Bismol to these meetings. I guess just planting a seed for your consideration as the policy director, if there's to be a special session taking up this matter, whether this board will take a position and give direction to work to advocate for that. I don't know what the association's conversations have looked like on this matter as yet, but just planting that seed that the legislative committee might need to bring a recommendation for a position.
Chair Lovell, Commissioner, seed planted, absolutely. We will need guidance.
All right, yes, Commissioner Farr.
Thanks. You know, Steve, good news indeed, right? In fact, what you're asking us to do is give you guidance, give you policy, and really we receive a lot of our information directly from you. And how can we move forward? It's not unlike a single income family trying to balance their budget. If there isn't money, you can't make money. Now, so it's difficult to move forward, particularly understanding that the legislature isn't necessarily responsive to our lobbying and responsive to what we ask them to do. So I guess I'd look for advice, and maybe we can discuss this in the legislative committee later on this week, I think it is. How can we combine our advice with other people's advice to make it have more punch in the legislature? Because quite often, and I know this, I was a legislator, legislators don't listen to the counties very often. You experience that. But if you present the direction that we give to the legislature or request from them through our, if we can possibly through our local delegation, can have a lot of weight if it is combined with other people's requests. But they're in the same situation we're in. You know, they can't produce money. It's not legal for them to have an unbalanced budget. You know, they can't go into the next session with an unbalanced budget. So how do you do it? You know, you can't print money. You can't get money from people that don't have money. And you can't levy new taxes when people aren't willing or able to pay them. So I'm a bit at a loss right now as to how we can move forward. And perhaps in the legislative committee meeting this week, when the directors are there and when other people are there, we can combine what our request is going to be and make it something that's going to be listened to. I'm not fully frustrated by this because we're not the only ones in this situation. And I'm not surprised by it because this nation elected the administration that it elected. That being said, how do we make longer permanent changes? And that becomes a question at this point in time, is what happens once we really illustrate what is happening to people regarding hunger, as you mentioned, regarding a lack of medical services, as you've mentioned, regarding people with the lowest income having even less services available to them. You know, how can we illustrate the plight of the people that are being served as opposed to the line items on the budget? So that becomes really what the issue is to me, is trying to paint a picture in the decision makers' minds, what is actually happening. And it's not the Oregon State Legislature. Their hands are tied probably even worse than ours are. So we can ask them for more, probably not going to get more. So, you know, Oregon is being punished. We know that, and that's what we're living through right now. So thanks for the presentation, Vanessa. Vanessa stepped out, but the work that you do together is admirable, and you bring us the absolute accurate news. And it doesn't generate smiles, but it does generate a resolve of some kind, Steve. Thank you.
Yes, Vice Chair.
Yeah, just quick, thanks. That was a tough presentation, but you oftentimes have a tough job, Mr. Adams, so appreciate that. I'm gonna have to mull this around and do some more outreach work, because all I did during this presentation was write down more questions, which isn't helpful at this point. So yeah, I just wanted to say thanks for the presentation, and there's some tough decisions that are going to have to be made, and what kind of advocacy work we do, who we talk to, and just what the temperature is really. Feel those things out. So sorry, not overly helpful at this point.
Well, again, good information creates us making the best decisions that we can have. So I reiterate, all of my colleagues have said that you guys are doing a great job in that good information. I also want to just kind of point out just something that Commissioner Farr said that kind of resonated with me, so that we don't always generate great results, but it does generate great resolve. And so I think that's where we're headed, is to see how resolve-ish we can be going forward. And we're going to do the best we can with what we have. And that's what we're going to do. So anything else you want to add?
At this time, Chair.
All right, great. Thank you, Mr. Adams, and give our best to Ms. Cornwall. She left, but you guys are doing a great job. Keep it up. Thank you very much. All right, Mr. Mokrzyski, it's on to you for some announcements, sir.
Thank you, Chair, Commissioners. Just a couple quick things. We've been working on setting up a meeting in Blue River, a board meeting. This was a request that the board asked for. We're targeting October 8th, 2025, which is the soonest date that we have available to coordinate all of that. We would do tours starting around 2 p.m. of the fire station, the clinic, library, Rose Street Homes, and Lazy Days. We'd leave Eugene around 1 p.m. Dinner would be provided. The board meeting would take place, this would be a publicly noticed board meeting. We would have Metro televise it. It would take place at the school gymnasium around 5:30 p.m. with panel presentations from both county staff and community partners, followed by public comment. So a lot of logistics involved. There is a little bit of a cost involved in that. So, you know, we can talk about that at the right time. Just a thing to keep in mind as we think about the potential of scheduling additional community meetings, particularly when we have Metro there doing the filming. You know, an official board meeting comes with some logistics and cost. Matt McCray is the contact person from staff who's coordinating all of that. So just kind of an update for you there. Also an update on the Public Safety Funding Task Force. You've heard, we've had a couple of work sessions with the board. We have another work session that we are scheduling October 21st, and we have monthly work sessions with the board tentatively scheduled for October 21st, November 18th, and December 9th. We also have a staff team that includes the sheriff and representatives of the sheriff's office, the district attorney, and county administration staff that are meeting every other week to prep for those work sessions. And we actually met yesterday to begin doing some of that work. So we will have an update for you on October 21st of some of the logistical things. We are looking at presenting to the board a discussion about doing a voter survey on some of the potential options that may be considered in the future. So 2 updates there. Then I just wanted to share, actually in this meeting, I received an email that was with an attached flyer that has gone out to some residents in Springfield and Eugene related to well, I guess what I'd call it is targeting members of our community based on race. And I just want to share here, I'm going to share that with commissioners. We'll send that sort of anonymous flyer that went out to some residents. It has been reported to the Oregon Department of Justice, and I believe that EPD and SPD have been made aware of that. And I just want to make, you know, the statement here that, of course, this board has said, and we say for our organization as well as for our community, that, you know, there's no space for hate here in Lane County. Lane County is committed to being a safe, inclusive, and welcoming place, both our organization and our communities, for all people, that we reject any forms of racism and any other hateful activity in all its forms, any bigotry in any form. And as we've said, as the board has said in prior actions, we have to foster a culture of belonging that embraces diversity and rejects fear and division. And so we want to say that we stand united in building a just and compassionate Lane County where everybody belongs. So sorry to end on that note, but also feel that it's important to elevate those incidents in the community that sometimes can happen where there's hateful speech that is spread, and it's important that we all stand up to that and talk about who we are as an organization and community. So that's all I have, Chair. Thank you, and unless you have questions for me.
Yes, Vice Chair.
Yes. Can we get an agenda for that possible Blue River meeting as whenever one comes up? That'll be an exciting meeting. And then a cost would be great, because I know that would mean a lot to Florence. I oftentimes hear the services stop at the tunnel, which we know isn't true, but it would mean a lot for them to see us over there at some point too, which would be fun.
Yep, absolutely. And, you know, it's at the board's discretion. The approximate cost for this meeting is around $3,100 is my understanding. There's some logistics involved in that as well. And this was a board request, so certainly if the board would like to have other meetings throughout in different places, for example, on the coast, we could do that. We've done that over the years, a handful of times in Florence, Veneta, and Oak Ridge, I think are the three that I recall that we've done them in. And so certainly, yeah, if the board would like to have. And then in terms of an agenda, yes, we'll work on getting an agenda. And it will be a publicized, publicly noticed board meeting, so that will all be made available.
Yes, Commissioner Trigger.
Thank you. I had not heard about that flyer. Thank you for bringing it to our attention. Thank you for emphasizing the county's values and positions as an organization from your role as an administrator. We have a week before we meet again, so I'm hoping as things develop, if that, once there's a little more information known, it becomes verified, I'd like to ask maybe that a statement come back. We have a rapid response framework that this board adopted and agreed to, that we would make statements on behalf of the board condemning acts of hate and bias in the community quickly. So I don't recall and can't bring up the particulars of it, but I'm hoping between today and a week from today, the agenda team can work with the administrator and our equity manager to see if it might not be appropriate to bring back a statement from the board on that community incident for our meeting next Tuesday, using that rapid response framework, if it applies. Thank you.
We can take a look at that and work with the agenda team.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Trigger, for bringing that up. Well done. All right, Ms. Morkowski, thank you very much. We move on to our last item of the morning before we recess for lunch. It's our Health and Human Services item. It's a report on the presentation on the current financials of the community health centers of Lane County. And with us, it looks like our Health and Human Services Director, Eve Gray, and our Federally Qualified Health Center Chief Executive Officer, Lisa Willis, is with us. Welcome.
Hello, good morning. I would love the opportunity to go back and talk to you about the importance of hands-on CPR or hands-only CPR that unfortunately we're here with more difficult financial news, which I think all of you are aware of, but we committed to bringing into public session so that we could have this discussion in a public format. Oh, all right, I'm gonna have to get good at the, oh, it's not. It's the hardest part of the whole meeting.
Practicing for when we take this on the road to Blue River, so just bear with us.
Okay. Gonna change. Okay. So, worst case scenario, I believe the PowerPoint is attached to the agenda, and I can always just use it on the computer, and we can, not show it up here, but the public should know if that happens, that they still have access to go in and download that PowerPoint from the agenda. Oh my gosh. Ooh, wizard.
Good job.
Okay. All right, so getting right into the discussion. So, of course, you are aware that we run a federally qualified health center. Right in the name is that we exist because our federal government decided to invest in the health of communities, and particularly looking at areas that were medically underserved and identifying where additional resources and incentives needed to be added in order to assure healthcare access within all communities in the United States. So we have long been designated a medically underserved area. We are, our latest health provider shortage numbers suggest that it's getting worse, not better, here in Lane County. So we did receive some updated numbers from the state. We have worsened over the last couple of years in terms of healthcare access in almost every measure that they look at. So we do receive some grant dollars from the federal government that help to support our service to individuals in our community who often cannot access care in the private sector. Particularly the Medicaid population, as you all know, is the population that we focus on the most, but also traditional Medicare are the two populations, as well as those who are uninsured, which we have a much smaller percentage of in Oregon because of the Medicaid expansion and the work that has been done to reduce uninsured access. There are still limited numbers of uninsured individuals within our community, however. So those individuals need access to care. Federally qualified health centers were really put into place to make sure that if the private sector said, I'm not taking any more than 30% of my patient panels as Medicaid, but we had more patients in the community on Medicaid needing care, that we would have a medical home and a place for folks. So you can see here that our funding for the federally qualified health centers, though it has gone up over the years in numerical quantities, when you adjust for inflation, what our funding is doing is what everybody's funding is doing in the healthcare field, and it is going down from an inflation-adjusted standpoint. And we know that healthcare inflation is its own unique number. We represent more than 20% of the gross domestic product in the United States. And our particular inflation tends to rise at a higher rate than inflation within the remainder of the economy. So this is a story of us being pinched dramatically from a revenue standpoint, and it is. We are projecting that this will continue. That expenditure, the cost of expenses, you know, this is what Mr. Mokrzycki says all the time. Our expenditures are growing faster than our revenues, right? So just another example right here. And now I will turn it over to Ms. Willis, who's going to give you a little bit of a tutorial about how we are paid within our community health centers in particular. And then once we get to the point where we're talking about what we're doing to balance our budget, I will take it back.
Thank you. And I won't go into incredible detail. For many, this information is dry, but I will. It just needs to be closer. But we wanted to make sure we gave some foundational information about how we are funded. And so we have been participating in what is called an alternative care and payment model since 2018 with the state specifically. And we have been participating in capitation arrangements with our CCOs in the subsequent years since 2019 and 2020. The alternative payment and care model is really focused on driving care and improved health outcomes versus rewarding a high volume of visits. And that's really around incentivizing providers to find cost-effective ways to provide care and a focus on getting our patients well and home and at work, and not sitting in our offices day after day having ongoing care for a specific issue. It's really about making people well and rewarding that behavior. So the APCM program really focuses on addressing root cause of illness and resolving chronic conditions as best you can. It links our payments to quality and not just pure volume, quantity. It's a growing initiative to really control costs and make sure that you're looking at how the most efficient track would be to get that patient well. And there is a push, which is growing in these years and future years around shared loss and savings. So really asking providers to partner with their health plans and to make sure that we're keeping costs to a point where the premium covers the cost of the care. And in those situations where the patient's needs financially have exceeded what the premium pays, that we would take a level of ownership and financial impact around that excess charge. So I mentioned capitation, and for some, this is a term that is not readily used. So capitation is a per member per month payment based on a population that is assigned to the health center. And what that looks like is capitation is a flat payment amount that's received on a monthly basis to a healthcare organization for a patient that is covered under that health plan. This flat payment amount can be counted on every month, regardless of whether that patient walks through the door that month or walks through the door 10 times that month. It is a singular payment for a set amount that is established during rate setting and contract negotiations. So that goes back to my point of making sure that patients are receiving the care that they need to be able to stay out of the clinics because they're healthy. They're not needing acute care on a frequent basis. There are services that are considered separate from a capitation arrangement. Those would still be reimbursed outside of that flat fee. And those are dental services, both preventative and acute, prenatal care, behavioral health services, and procedures that are done in the healthcare setting. As a federally qualified health center, we are also eligible for an enhanced payment from the state for those services that are carved out from our capitation payment, as I just went through. And this is what we call a REP payment, which is a prospective payment service. So our initial PPS rate, that prospective payment, is established by the state of Oregon through an analysis of both costs and revenue. And they look at kind of the full scope of what it costs to operate the clinic, your patient volumes, your provider and staff ratios, and looks at what it would take for a health center, such as a federally qualified health center, that is typically caring for our Medicaid population, which historically has less competitive payment rates, as well as an uninsured population, that safety net clinic goal. And so it looks at what it would take in terms of an enhanced payment to be able to financially sustain an organization focused on that population. It also serves as a baseline payment and does have an escalator associated with it year over year. So that is one of the areas where we do see that the state is proactive in making sure that some level of inflationary impact is addressed in this payment model.
Excuse me, do we entertain questions as we go along, or do you just wait to the end?
I think we can take questions, certainly questions
We do have
that are
a
clarifying.
little bit of time, but go ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is a clarifying question. The calculated at each health center, and so then is it averaged out across, or is different health centers getting a different rate?
Different health centers get a different rate.
And then on the previous slide, the reimbursements outside of capitation, behavioral health, prenatal, dental procedures, the reimbursement rate for those, though, is still well under the cost to actually deliver the services.
It depends on the service. So perhaps some procedures would exceed that RAP payment amount. We would get paid what the fee-for-service reimbursement is from the health plan that the service was provided under. For other services like behavioral health, where perhaps it is not as high of a cost, we would get that RAP payment, which is designed to exceed the cost of providing that service and to exceed what you would typically get from either a Medicaid or commercial payer.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So we did want to share our payment rates. We are able to share our state capitation rate as well as our RAP payment rate. I cannot share our rates for our coordinated care organizations, which is Pacific Source and Trillium, as those are negotiated rates that are required to remain confidential within the organization. So they are not allowed to be shared publicly. But I did provide there, our state capitation payment is $50.46. So that is what the state deems is our monthly payment per member per month for our Medicaid eligible patients that we are actively engaged with and providing services to. For our RAP payment amount, so again, these are those carved out services, we received payment from the state in the amount of $302.44. We do have to bill any coordinated care organizations ahead of billing the state. Coordinated care organization will pay us our fee for service payment according to our contracted rates. And then we will submit a claim to the state for the delta between that 302 and what we received from our CCO. So how did we get here? So we wanted to give a little bit of history information in terms of our performance over the last 2 fiscal years that have been completed. So first we look at our fiscal year 23-24 performance. We started our fiscal year 24 with a $6.3 million fund balance carryover. So these are reserves that had built up over prior fiscal years, giving us kind of a savings account that would be used. This looks like a really big number, but it's important to call out here that we opened our first rural health clinic, South Lane Clinic in Cottage Grove, in fiscal year 24. And we had been working with the community of Cottage Grove for a number of years to do fundraising events and outreach to be able to receive the dollars that were necessary for the construction and opening of that clinic. The county took all ownership for operational expense, but the city of Cottage Grove and the Do Your Best organization were very active in collecting the funds necessary to actually do the work involved in opening a new clinical space. So we saw that those grant dollars, those donations, that fundraising effort come into the budget in prior fiscal years, which built up this, what looks to be a surplus of revenue in prior years, was in fact revenue coming in that would be expensed as the project progressed and then came to completion. We saw some money come out in that fiscal year related to the capital expense of opening the clinic of about $2 million. We achieved $40 million in revenue, and that would be through the delivery of services. Our expenses, excluding that capital amount already called out, were $43 million, which left us at a fiscal year-end balance, reducing the fiscal reserves of $590,000 from a starting balance of $6.3 million. And how did that happen? We can see here, we received about 83% of the revenue that we budgeted for in our annual budget. We spent 78% of what we had budgeted for personnel. So this reflects on a level of vacancy, which for a community health center, something like a provider vacancy, which has savings on your personnel line because you're not spending that salary, is actually quite a deficit to your revenue because the system is designed that a provider would generate greater revenue than what they cost because their work has to support all of the medical support staff, your operational staff that are operating services, but not actually creating a revenue opportunity. So to have that vacancy seems like a savings, but in reality can be quite challenging to the financial sustainability. And we did see that our budgeted materials and supplies were in excess of what we had budgeted, which is how we found ourselves in a greater expense to revenue ratio.
I think the other thing that I would add about this particular fiscal year and the performance is part of the fund balance carryover was also COVID dollars. And those COVID dollars had an end date, and we had to expend them. So you're seeing this particular expenses exceeding revenues, even in the non-capital, did not freak us out that particular fiscal year, because we knew that we had funds and we had a deadline and we had to spend them. And we actually used that to purchase our new electronic health record and give our patients much greater access to a much more powerful tool, as well as our providers. So that, you know, this year was, the performance maybe looks like it should have raised alarms, but for those reasons, it did not.
Yes, Commissioner Buck, please.
On the budgeted revenue received, 83 before, and then on the next slide, 76. Is the difference between getting 100% and these numbers an uncollectible amount? Or what are the reasons we're not able to receive all the income for services delivered?
So often, that is that our projections do not end up being the reality. So a lot of that, because we're on capitated arrangement for much of our revenue, if we projected that we would be caring for a certain number of individuals, Medicaid eligible individuals, and we did not see those volumes assigned to us, or we were not able to engage with as many patients as we anticipated, that would have a direct impact on our revenue and being able to achieve those budgeted numbers. And so we recognized there were a handful of various pieces impacting our success in that area. One was that through a miscommunication, we were temporarily not receiving new Medicaid assigned lives from one of our CCOs. So that slowed down our engagement with our Medicaid population here locally, which impacted a difference between actuals and projection in that case. So that would be, I think, the primary impact there. It's going to be a number of other issues as well. We receive a variety of both state and federal grants that may or may not happen in subsequent years. They are dependent on funds being available in subsequent years. And so when you're going into your budgeting process 6 months in advance of the fiscal year happening, you're really, in some cases, making assumptions that the funding will continue to the best of your knowledge.
And I think the other thing in this second fiscal year on the revenue is we did have a pretty rough go live with Epic related to our revenue cycle. So we are still going back and trying to capture revenue that we were not able to capture because of a very rough go live. And so actually some of this 76% is going to show up this fiscal year because we're still billing last year's stuff at a higher rate than we should be. That we are getting a lot of help from our vendor. They're coming in, they are helping to staff our billing team so that we can get things caught up and fixed. But that's part of why that 76% number is so low as well for 24-25.
Thank you. Yes, and I do want to call it without going through line by line, because I appreciate that we want to leave time for questions at the end, that just to call the attention again to where we were out of alignment in terms of expense and revenue, resulting in a very large fiscal year end balance in the negative. And again, this is impacted by revenue achieved in prior fiscal years, expenses for the completion of construction projects being realized in subsequent fiscal years. To Eve's point, absolutely, the implementation of a new electronic health record always has impacts to productivity, and we experienced that very much so in our process, and continue to work through those old items and turn that around. And have total faith that this tool will get us there. So again, pointing out, we did a little better on our personnel. We were not as far behind in our spending in that area. We've had a lot of success in terms of recruiting providers. And so that's going to help us turn that number back towards the positive in terms of revenue opportunity as well. And we continue to look at our budgeted materials and supplies. And I do just want to call out, this is not just, medications and equipment for the delivery of healthcare services. This includes our county direct and indirects as well. So as costs go up for us around personnel, either through COLAs or renegotiation of contract terms, that not only impacts our personnel line, but also impacts those direct and indirects as that's felt across the county.
Yeah, and I think we covered this in our last work session, kind of the anticipated deficit. We do have some dollars that we were hoping would hit in last fiscal year to ameliorate this deficit a little bit. They did not arrive last fiscal year. I'm told they will arrive within the next 7 to 10 days. So that is the speed at which the state is processing our requests for reimbursement right now. But that essentially should have been reflected against this particular deficit. And then you see the capital expenditures. We did have some overruns in the South Lane Clinic in cost. So there was some of that had to be covered as well. So the real operating deficit is less than you see that bottom line number right there. However, we were hit with a number of other items that created a deficit for us. Now, going into this particular fiscal year, we, in the way that everything is supposed to work, we are supposed to be able to do our revenue projections really well 6 months before the fiscal year and build the right budget. But we were still in the middle of the Epic Go Live revenue mess at the point of our budgeting. And we really wanted to resist the temptation to take steps to cut too deep if we had not yet identified all of the revenue opportunities that were available to us. And so what we ended up having to do, what we are having to do mid-year is not ideal, but we finally got what we think are solid projections on our revenue as well, and we knew we had solid projections on our expenditures, but that happened after the final budgeting process. This shouldn't happen again in future years. This was part of trying to recover from our Epic Go Live. So what we identified this year was that if nothing changed from a revenue standpoint, that was never the plan. We were always projecting to continue bringing on new patients and building revenue, but we were still looking at a significant up to a $7 million deficit for this particular fiscal year. We identified that with certainty over the summer and knew that we had to take some steps in order to close that gap. We can't just continue building a deficit. The goal would be for us to break even this year and then begin repaying the deficit that we had in future years, because for a lot of these revenue opportunities, they build throughout the year. So you don't get a whole year of that revenue opportunity in the year that you are getting there. Same thing with expenditure reductions that we will talk about. We won't get a full year of that realized this year. That'll happen next year. So that is when we would project pending other things that we can't control. That is where we would project a positive balance within the CHCs. And I'll speak to all those things that we can't control at the very end as well. So these were the targets that we set for ourselves from a revenue standpoint. You can see that we wanted to continue to add new patients. That's just, I mean, it's good for us and it's good for our community to take care of people. We identified a dental payer who we had not, there had been just some old lore about billing, but we had an opportunity, about $1 million opportunity with that particular payer to get them assigned and get bills out the door for dental claims, which we are taking advantage of. We've looked for years at starting an in-house 340B pharmacy. It's felt like a real uphill climb because that is not our area of expertise, but we have identified that there are vendors who will do this work for you as an FQHC, and they will take their share of the revenues and give the rest to you as profit. So you can see that that there's some modest opportunity for this year in getting that started, but that increases to multi-million-dollar opportunities as long as the 340B program at the federal level stays intact, which is always, it's a question mark every year. Balance billing our patients. We have not been consistently sending those bills for patients for what is owed. That we're not talking about Medicaid. These are Medicare and a tiny number of commercially insured as well as uninsured individuals who are on our sliding scale. So as we get those bills out the door, it's actually, we write off about $1 million a year related to this. So we are anticipating we will collect a much smaller percentage than what patients might owe because we do not contract with a collections agency. We do not intend to contract with a collections agency. We're not going to go after people in our community. But when folks can pay what is owed, we feel that it's our responsibility, especially in this fiscal environment, for us to collect. We did receive a grant from Trillium that will help us this fiscal year. We are working on contract renegotiations. That is both with Trillium and with the state. These are not guaranteed numbers in any stretch. The payers would have to agree to these numbers. And what I will say is that we started engaging in contract negotiations with Trillium before we had heard that Pacific Source was potentially pulling out of our CCO market. That likely means we didn't ask for enough because we are not allowed to share what the payers pay us, but there is a disparity between the payers, and the loss of Pacific Source in our community would have a further negative financial impact that is not of small significance for us. So we are in the process of running those analyses. I should have them by tomorrow, actually, in terms of what that would look like if we lost Pacific Source, if everyone went to the rate of pay that we receive from our other payer, if some folks were to go to the state-run Medicaid program, if Trillium isn't able to take all of those covered lives. And through those projections, we will identify where the gaps remain. But that is, you know, that was hard news to be hit with last week, for sure.
Can I ask a quick question? Is the state, what is that, open card? Is that what the state program is called?
State DMAP, yes.
Yeah. And are those negotiated rates, or are those rates we are told this is the rate? What is?
Those are rates we're told this is the rate, though they would be eligible for WRAP payment because it would be a fee-for-service model. And the law states that someone must be assigned to a CCO in a community. I think the question is, given that Trillium is only about 30% of the current Medicaid covered lives, would they be able to ramp up their network quickly enough to take 90,000 additional lives as of January 1st? If not, then the state would have to work with either Trillium or potentially look at bringing another CCO into the community to assist. There may be a gap there in terms of the ability to have CCO coverage for everyone. This is just me surmising. Right? We have not heard anything official from the state about what their plan is or from Trillium. But we do know that Trillium doesn't contract with all of the providers that Pacific Source does. So we anticipate that there would need to be some work in building a bigger network in order to support all of Lane County's Medicaid residents. Go ahead.
Let's talk a lot about that, but not at this moment in time, because that really, it's breaking news, and we're not sure exactly what's going to shake down, and there are a lot of questions about that. Now's not the time to raise them, but that being said, you know, we have we can talk more about the RAP payments and how that covers whatever the disparities may happen to be. But what is the stability of the RAP payment? I guess that's a discussion that we need to have more in detail. But that's not for this discussion today. But it really is, it's not a can of soup. I mean, it really is, it is the absolute strong discussion that we have to have once we learn more.
Yes, thank you. And we are anxiously waiting information from the state about not only what they intend to do for our immediate needs related to CCO coverage within the county, but also what their plans are on balancing the Medicaid budget, for sure. So we also identified some expenditure reductions, and I failed to give to just state out loud the bottom line. Our revenue opportunities that we identified, about $4.5 million this year, and increasing over 3 years to about $9 million of additional revenue opportunity is what we're targeting in terms of all of those opportunities. But that wasn't enough. So we did have to take a look at our expenditures. We went ahead and eliminated an additional approximately 30 vacant positions. That was after more than 30 vacant positions were already eliminated in the last budget cycle in creating our budget for this year. We have reduced some management and support staff. They were notified of that within, some of them last week, some of them in the weeks prior to that. Some of those reductions will take place at the end of this month. Some of them will take place at the beginning of November. We announced to our staff last week that we had conversations with the full Health Council that of our intent to consolidate care at several of our locations. So we already, well, I guess I will get there, but we are moving our providers from the Brookside Clinic primarily to the Charnelton Clinic, where we had additional space. I believe one was reassigned to the West 11th Clinic as well, where we had additional space, but identified that we were running an additional location with the additional overhead associated with an additional location when we had space in our other clinics, and it felt like the wise financial move for us to consolidate that down to fewer areas of care. We have eliminated a nursing program, the Transition of Care Nursing Program, which were registered nurses whose job it was to connect with patients being discharged from the hospital in order to get them in to follow-up care in a timely manner. That is still very important work. We have taken those workflows and we've moved them to the teams at the clinics and have looked at reorganizing some of the work at the clinics in order to accommodate that task continuing to happen, but not in its own dedicated team anymore. We also officially have notified all of our patient care staff at our MLK primary care location that they will be moving and consolidating to other locations. Again, primarily Charnelton, I think maybe a little bit of Riverstone as well. And then we have reduced our hours, or are reducing our hours at our Springfield High School clinic. We will still maintain a presence there several days a week. We will offer transportation to students who need care on the days that we are not in their school, but we were not able to build enough of a panel at the high school in order to support a full-time provider there anymore and be able to afford that. So these particular reductions, just over $3 million, is what we anticipate being the savings this year, and about $4.5 million once that's annualized next year. And before I get to questions, you know, what I will say is we had notified all of CHC staff on Wednesday of the consolidations of care, of the layoffs of some of their leadership. And we sent out a communication that day saying, guys, we think we did it. We think we closed the gap. And Thursday was when Pacific Source announced that they may not be signing the CCO contract. The instability that we are experiencing right now is, just vulnerably, it's very scary. What we're hearing from the Oregon Health Authority is that they would like to balance their Medicaid budget by further reducing payments to providers, most of which are like us, on a knife's edge, barely able to make ends meet. We already saw a hospital closure in our community. We have hospitals. I do not believe we have a hospital running a surplus in our community. I believe they are both running deficits, and provide all of our healthcare providers, unless they go completely to a commercial market, are suffering these same sorts of financial realities. So in one respect, we are in good company. In another respect, just continuing to not know what's going to happen with Medicaid, what's going to happen with the 340B program, what's the federal decision-making going to be around grants for community health centers, and which ones will be awarded grants, what will be the value of those grants. All of this instability is making for a really challenging environment, not just to lead. I mean, it's not about me. I'm in here mired in all this, but the people who are providing the care are really, really suffering right now. And they are coming to work every day saving lives and living in this environment of instability. And so I say that not for you to do anything, but just to say it in public, just how big of an impact all of this is having. And with that, I will open up to questions.
Commissioner Farr.
Thank you, and I'm going to go from the end to the first. And the first, there's not much we can do about other than monitor what is happening. And but the end is where we're taking steps to do things. And I will say that up until Wednesday, the plan was fantastic. Not fantastic, but it's a well laid out plan that really covered the gaps with a minimal of impact on individuals, and more importantly, a minimal of impact on the people who rely on us for medical services. And I think we had this. I think each of us had a discussion separately with you about it, and really it demonstrates an acute, I'll say, business sense, but a balancing sense that really does. It's very impressive the way you presented that, the way you move forward, without the impact on the patients. Then came Thursday, right? And what happens there, once again, that's a longer discussion. We have to discuss what is the long-term effect. But, I'll quote another source, this is a legal milestone and not the end of the process, but instead a step in the negotiation process. And so Pacific Source this is a step for them along the way. It's not an absolute until it's an absolute.
It's not an absolute.
And in the meantime, what can we do? How can we advocate to help Pacific Source to help them make a decision to stay in the community and to continue with the superb service that they've given for all the years since we started having 2 CCOs. And a reminder that before that we had 1 CCO, and that was Trillium, and they did have 100% of the cases in the patients in Oregon, so which is a 30-70 split or so now. So the question then becomes, how can we advocate for Pacific Source? And they are asking us to help. And I, for one, would love to have advice as to how I can most effectively be of assistance there, and in communicating with OHA or whatever it may be, consolidating our pleas with other pleas. I'll say pleas, but really we're at a point in time right now where we shouldn't just throw the bathwater out. Let's do what we can do to maintain as full a tub as we can. Horrible analogies, but really, at this point in time, it's not time for hand-wringing, it's a time for a march to action. And I think with your guidance and with the guidance of the professional staff that you have, we can do that and be the most effective that we as a board can be, and that we can consolidate our efforts with other people in the community to make sure that we don't have a lapse, or that the lapse is as minimal as possible.
Thank you.
Commissioner Buck.
Thank you. This is obviously coming after a series of conversations we've had at our meetings regarding budget cuts. We had parole and probation come tell us about their budget gap. On the Human Services Commission, we've been notified that the funding for human services is cut in half. We just had the outlay for state and federal budget cuts right before you presented. And now we're seeing what it's taking to keep our clinics afloat and a potential loss of Pacific Source in the community. I think we are in the throes now of really triaging budget deficits coming our way. And I appreciate it being laid out so we see it as it comes. I think this is likely just the beginning of what we're going to be impacted with the decline in income and revenues from federal and state resources. So this is going to be an extremely challenging year going forward. I think we'll need to have more discussion, obviously, about what it's going to, what the impact with Pacific Source is actually going to be. I really hope we can change our mind. And I agree that we need to find ways in which we can advocate at our board level, but this is obviously state level discussions that are being made up here. But whatever we can do, obviously, we're available and want to advocate. My challenge is, how are we going to best navigate and triage this really negative budget cycle, where it's going to impact people all over our community. The closure of Brookside, no hospital in Eugene, West Eugene is really not seeing the same ability for people to get care in their area as they were before. And I know some of those people walked into that clinic. They walk there. So moving to Charlton, I don't know if they'll walk all the way to Charlton and get care. There's a few other urgent cares out there, but they may or may not be able to help these particular patients depending on their insurance provider. I've talked to some of the staff who are wildly concerned about what it's going to be like without Pacific Source in our community, knowing that the rate structure for reimbursement is really not set up in a way that is a viable business plan for either CCO. And so trying to find a surplus of income on one hand in order to make up for the loss in rate reimbursement to our CCOs is really challenging. We don't do major medical procedures in which there's some kind of surplus income that can, fill the gap in that hole that we see from a lower rate reimbursement. And so what we're trying to do is utilize, other avenues within your division. And of course, in the past, utilized some general fund, but we don't really have that anymore. So I think all in all, we are just in the beginnings of trying to come to grips with the revenue deficits that are being hit. And I'd like to be able to weigh in at the state level in any way possible.
Thank you.
Commissioner Trigger.
Sure. I think the only thing I'll comment on for today is sort of what you closed with, Director Gray, about the impact on the people that remain here at the organization trying to deliver care. And as imperfect a metaphor as it is, I keep thinking of stories of impoverished women who are formula feeding their babies, and formula gets more expensive and their income keeps going down, and they have to keep watering the formula down, and they're keeping that baby alive, but they know they're sacrificing its health, and it's a really painful thing to watch and to have to do. And for some reason, that is the analogy that is coming to my mind about what is happening to our healthcare system, but also to our workforce here at Lane County. People are not going to give up on their patients, but we are asking them to work in really, really challenging conditions. So my great appreciation to everyone who's doing the work. Thank you.
Thank you.
Vice Chair.
Yeah. Commissioner Trigger, thank you for that analogy. It was very well said. And I agree that thank you for coming to us before and kind of giving us a heads up. And, you know, I really appreciate those one-on-ones and the dialogue that comes with it. And I just want to say, I just want to ask, how can we help? I mean, at what level can we come to the state and let them hear what we're going through, show them these numbers, and just say, what should we do? So please, let's continue this dialogue, and anything that anybody up here at this dais can do to help, I know they will, because we do care about our community. So, thank you.
Thank you.
It's been a sobering day, hasn't it, for everyone? It's feels really heavy up here. I do want to commend Commissioner Trigger on her analogy, and it got me thinking, and I don't want to throw Neil Moyer under the bus here, but it seems to me like a picture's worth 1,000 words in these particular things. Data is just data. I think legislators and people that make decisions can look at data and decide things that really aren't humanity-driven. They're data-driven. And so I think, you know, some of the analogy that Commissioner Trigger brilliantly put forward was, you know, I can just visually see that in a video saying, look, state, this is what's happening to some people in our community. We need you to come to the table and make this right. And so I just throw out that as maybe a way of communicating our feelings more effectively to the legislator, which all of us on this dais, I think, are willing to do and want to do on your behalf and the community's behalf. And the analogies and the explanations that you've so graciously and expertly gave to us, it makes me realize that we're all connected. It's like a big row of dominoes. Everybody's connected, and we're connected to people that we are dependent on them being solvent. And the solvency of them depends on the solvency of us. And some of that markers and those measurements are being moved too fast for us to even realize our own solvency or insolvency. And so this is a very challenging space for you all to be in and for your team to be in, but I so appreciate and am hearing your expertise on making new connections and trying to make things bridge gaps that are becoming wider with the dedication and the sacrifice of your staff and just the way that you care for people. And I think that's what's going to save the day in the end. I don't know that we're going to have a number or budgetary check to write to make this gap, but I think the ability of people to care for other people is what's going to carry us through this, and the budget is not. So I'm banking on us as a community to come together as caring for one another and do whatever it takes. I'll call on churches and faith organizations and service organizations and NGOs and all those people who help, that we're going to have to go the extra mile coming forward to make this happen. So, and I appreciate you all going the extra mile. So I'm here to help any way we can do it.
Thank you.
Anything final? Yes, Commissioner Farr.
If I could end with as optimistic a note as I possibly can. You know, I think what you presented through the 17th, through last Wednesday, was, again, a wonderful job of making the budget balance with actually a projection for better news next year and the year after, and beginning to actually pay back some of the deficits that were until the 17th we were putting in. But after the 17th, we have the discussion regarding CCOs. And the optimistic news is something that somebody said to me. Pacific Source has been clear that they do not want to walk away from Lane County. Let's just hang on that and do what we can to make that a reality.
Thank you.
All right, if there's nothing else for the good order, again, thank you for coming with this information and for the one-on-ones that you graciously gave us. It is now for us time to recess for the morning, and we'll see us back here at the Board of County Commissioners Conference Room at 1:30. We are recessed.